Members, as I indicated earlier today and to the public, it's the chair's intention to allow for 4 hours of public testimony on HB 7. The plan is to alternate witnesses who have registered for and against the bill in question. For those unable to testify in the allotted time frame, your registered position will be reflected in the official record. Also, there's the portal I've referenced a couple of times that will be open till the end of this hearing. The chair lays out HB 7 and recognizes Chairman Guillen to explain his bill. The chair offers a committee substitute to HB 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, the communities and public institutions in the border region of Texas face significant strain due to immigration and criminal activity along the Rio Grande. Texans who own property in the border region deal with damages to their property rooted in the same cause. And the economies of our communities also suffer from the fallout of the current situation along our border. The judicial system, law enforcement, and other public services, maintained in large part by local taxpayer dollars, are stretched thin as they shoulder the brunt of the impact, adversely affecting the public services provided to these families and these communities. Landowners frequently suffer damages to their property due to trespassers and smugglers. Commerce and trade in the border region suffer as well due to challenges in transportation and logistics, diminished industrial investment and job creation, or decline in tourism. On top of that, professional border enforcement personnel are hard to come by, as the demand for well-trained professionals needed to improve the situation on the border outstrips their availability. The committee substitute to House Bill 7 helps address these issues through a variety of programs to assist the judicial system, law enforcement, public services in health and safety, property owners, educational institutions, businesses, and communities in the border region who find themselves bearing the brunt of the current situation. Members, our fellow Texans need our help, and CSHB 7 helps deliver it where it's needed the most. The committee sub, in addition to being a Ledge Council draft, expands on the categories and scope of the programs in the original bill based upon constituent feedback and input from our fellow members, including my desk mate. I can help answer any questions if you have any.
Any questions for Chair Guillen? All right, thanks. We'll let you have the right to close. So we're going to start public testimony. What is the clerk's official time? 5:56 p.m. Nelson Barnes. Nelson, we have you registered for the 452nd District Attorney's Office, neutral on HB 7. Is that correct?
That's correct, sir.
Okay, go right ahead.
I'm here as a resource to answer any questions that might have come up in regards to the bill, as well as to just to sound redundant, that the court systems are overwhelmed with what we've got now, even if we didn't change any laws on the books. And those the need for extra court dates and judges and that thing in the border region is huge right now.
Representative Anchia.
Yeah, so I want to drill down on that a little bit. Earlier, you gave some statistics. Would you mind repeating those on the existing backlog that exists?
Yes, sir. We're working with the district attorney in Valverde, Kinney, and Terrell counties, and she has estimated that she has 4,000 to 7,000 cases in her chain right now, with an estimate of 2023. That does not include her 2023 numbers. And based on those coming through, she's guesstimating 9,000 to 12,000 felonies over by the end of 2023.
And earlier you said that this data was since the inception of Operation Lone Star?
Yes, sir.
Would have been 2016?
2021.
Since
would have been when the initiative started, yes.
I see, because we've been funding
yes, sir. Other
border initiatives for a long time. And in order to clear this backlog, how many additional courts do you need? Scope of magnitude.
She's got one district court. I know they have a plan in place right now to start having 25 trials set for juries in Kinney County every Monday and Wednesday till the future runs out.
So what would
Whether we'd have
alleviate the backlog?
3 or 4 courts,
3 to 4 courts?
3 or 4 courts, and then she's going to need some prosecution resources.
How many prosecutors?
Probably, she has 5. She probably needs 15 to 20.
15 to 20. Okay.
And
that
that's
is
with a
that is
pretty
for the
hefty
3-county
caseload.
region?
That's for her 3-county region, yes, sir. This is also the same kind of problem they've got in Maverick County. The Dimmitt Maverick Zavala, what I lovingly refer to as the DMZ.
Yep.
They have the same kind of problem. Their numbers may not be quite as big as Kinney's were.
So what
But
do you
it's
think, scope of magnitude, 20% less?
I'm going to guess 30% less that I'm
30%
aware
less.
of. Yes, sir.
All right.
I had a meeting recently with their district judge where he said, I've just got to have another court coordinator because I just can't even keep the balance going.
And this is without any increase in penalties
This is just
or
Doing what we're doing.
not causes of action, what would you call it, charges?
Charges, yes.
Charges,
Just doing
right.
what we're doing.
Just doing
Right.
what we're doing right now. Got it. And do we have a financial forecast on what this would take?
I haven't put numbers to paper on
Can you
that.
follow up with me on that? And-
Yes, sir.
and
Happy
just-
to.
Just give me,
Right.
it doesn't, you don't need to give me an Excel pro forma. Your best guesstimate.
Sure.
Would be helpful.
We can happily get back with you on that.
And what are the effects of this backlog other than people not receiving any sort of, receiving a processing of their case?
It's obviously the delays in all cases, not to mention just these cases, but every other case in that county.
Are people showing up for their
yes,
cases?
I can anecdotally use probably the best example is a county in our jurisdiction. Edwards County, which is Rock Springs, Texas, has a population of 1,422 people at the last census. We had 803 smugglers arrested last year in Edwards County. So we're very close to a one-on-one basis.
Right.
About 90% of our smugglers show up for court.
90%?
But probably 95% of our smugglers are U.S. citizens.
Right.
And they have a bail bondsman who gets them to court.
Gets them to court. So 95% of the smugglers are U.S. citizens?
Yes, sir. I would say that is probably a fair number.
Gotcha. Because we've heard these terms of, these cartel invasions and everything like that. It sounds like U.S. citizens
I
are
believe-
doing just fine, making money off of this as well.
And most of our smugglers are folks who are being recruited off of social media.
Sure, sure.
And that's,
And they take the deal.
they take the deal.
They take
And it's
the
not a
deal.
good deal, but they take it.
Okay. And what penalties do you usually, do these smugglers get, on average?
On those who have no criminal record and who pull over, they don't flee from the stop, most of them receive some type of probation, mainly deferred adjudication probation, where they can wipe it off their record.
Can the judges sentence them more severely?
Yes, the punishment is up to 10 years.
Up to 10 years.
It's 2 to 10 years is the potential punishment
Up to
for
10
smuggling.
years, but most of them just get probation.
The ones who haven't fled.
There's
Now,
95% of U.S. citizens who are the smugglers, you only get probation.
right.
Got it.
But, I take that back, Representative. If they have fled, that changes.
Okay,
Yeah,
give me
if-
that data.
Yeah. I would hate to put a percentage number that I could say how many evade, but we have a fair percentage that does try to flee.
Also U.S. citizens?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
They somehow think they can drive away.
They can
Right.
move faster in a radio.
Exactly.
A radio wave.
And
yeah.
then we have had some which are still pending with us where we have had a death involved in that pursuit. Many of those, the smuggler is killed along with everyone else in the car.
Right.
But we also, I know we have one right now that's pending where the smuggler was not killed. And we have used all our resources in order to prosecute that, including keeping the smugglees in the U.S. via the U visa process to become our witnesses in the case.
You give them a T visa or U visa, and
Yes, sir.
they're able to testify again.
And they were able to testify as to identify who was driving the car.
I passed that bill many, many years ago, the T and U visa bill.
Yeah. That has become a real tool for prosecutors around the state on cases where it's needed. We may not need that on your regular third-degree smuggling where they've pulled over and no one's been hurt. And many of those will confess to their misdeed as well.
And if they flee, what is the maximum penalty that they can?
2 to 20 years.
2 to 20. And
It
what is,
becomes a
what is the,
second-degree
what is the
felony.
average? If, again, difficult to say, give me your best
It's
sense.
very difficult to say. Most of those, our plea offer is somewhere in the 8 to 12-year range if it involves a really serious fleeing. I mean, there's a fleeing that goes a mile and then they pull over, and there's a fleeing that goes 10 to 12 miles and they roll off the road and those type of things. But we use those ranges to give prosecutors tools to relate facts to cases.
Plea 2 to 10, roughly?
Yes,
Okay, thanks.
you're welcome.
Appreciate you.
Any other questions? And when you share the information, make sure the author of the bill gets it as well.
Yes, sir.
Thank you so much. Jennifer Canales, and it's Pelaez. Jennifer, we have you registered for Immigrant Legal Resource Center and Self against HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes, Chairman.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman and Committee. My name is Jennifer Canales Pelaez, and I am a Texas policy attorney and strategist with the Immigrant Legal Resource Center. But most importantly, I am a Texan residing in Houston. Today, I'm here testifying against HB 7. HB 7 establishes special border protection courts that will continue to perpetrate human rights violations. Dozens of complaints have been filed, including one April 2022 complaint where 16 plaintiffs alleged that they were arrested and incarcerated under Operation Lone Star based upon their race, immigration status, and national origin. There are substantiated accounts of law enforcement officers directing migrants to enter private property to subsequently arrest them for trespassing. Because these charges lacked probable cause required under the law, many of the trespassing cases against migrants have been dismissed, and a Texas district court judge has ruled Operation Lone Star as unconstitutional. Proposing the expansion of courts where constitutional violations occur openly is just proposing continued failure at taxpayers' expense. By voting for HB 7, you will continue the streak of making Texas one of the states with the most hateful laws in the nation. This is not the Texas that residents want or deserve. Vote no on HB 7 and stand with the people of Texas and on the right side of history. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions, members? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Brent Smith. Brent, we show you've registered for Kenny County Attorney and Self for HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Go right ahead.
I'll just have a short comment. I support the bill. One of the things that I noticed that might need some revision is on section 421A004, use of funds. It specifically it doesn't include the drivers of the smuggling vehicles that go through ranches. Damages caused by people entering the country illegally, but a lot of the damages are also done by the drivers, some of which are U.S. citizens. So a lot of times they drive through the fences, kill cattle, livestock, and things of that nature. So I would request that that be included in the use of the funds. But other than that, that's all.
Representative Nchia, then I'll.
I think Chairman Guillen
Chairman
is senior to
Guillen,
me.
go ahead.
We fixed it in the sub.
Okay. Thank you.
So if you'd get with the chairman's office to review the substitute and then confer with him, would you do that?
Yes, sir, I will.
Representative Nchia.
So we heard testimony earlier that 95% of the smugglers are U.S. citizens, roughly. Let's say it's 85. Overwhelming number of the smugglers are U.S. citizens. If they damage the property of a landowner, isn't there a cause of action in tort as well?
Possibly. That's not my area of law, but,
I mean, Law School 101.
Right. Damages,
Yep,
correct.
Yep. So there would be a cause of action, and maybe rather than the state creating a fund to reimburse people, there would just be a cause of action in tort like any other property damage might
It also
occur.
require the landowners to hire lawyers and pay litigation costs.
Well, that's what I would have to do if somebody
Right.
damages my property, regardless of who they are.
I think there's a misconception, though, when people say damaged property. It's not like, I guess a good example of people living in the city is you having your car, backed into or something. You go to the body shop and get that fixed, happens once a year. The ranchers on the border are having that every month, every week. There's ranchers that have fixed their fence over 50 times. That's unsustainable financially, and it's nothing to do with their fault.
Okay. So
so
if somebody trespassed on my property in Dallas and ruined my fence repeatedly, I would still have a cause of action in tort against them, right?
Sure.
As a U.S. citizen. Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions, members? Thank you very much. Anna Katharina Deckert. And it's is Anna here? Anna Katharina, Dechert.
You switched to somebody else?
No.
I apologize. I registered against Frontier.
Carrie, come up. Are you Anna?
I am.
Just come up and we can get it fixed. So Anna Katharina Deckert is registered for TAHRIH Justice Center in Self, and you registered against HB 7, but you're telling us you're going to be testifying against the other bill, 20? Yes. So you have the right to just register and show you're against HB 7.
Correct. That was my intention.
That's it. So let's just get it clarified. So Anna, we have your affirmation for the TAHRIH Justice Center and Self against HB 7, and that's your position.
Correct. Thank you.
And we can do that, correct?
Thank you.
Any questions, members? Thank you very much. Michael Belsick. Michael, we have you registered for yourself for HB 7. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Right ahead.
Most of you probably know the name of Cesar Chavez. In California, where I'm from, there's probably not a city in California that doesn't have a major thoroughfare named after him. If you don't know him, he was well-renowned for his continuous fight for migrant farm workers in the Southern California farm area. That's why he gets all the accolades. What is not very well known, which I read in a biography, so hearsay type thing, but he went down to the border with fellow farm workers to, shall I say, encourage migrant workers coming north from Mexico to, you don't really want to come here. And he did that because he knew the simple law of economics, supply and demand. If there were twice as many farm workers in the area, then some farmer would not necessarily have to pay the same amount of money to hire farmhands. They would pay them less. So it was Cesar Chavez was protecting the people that were there working now. That was his goal. And I just thought it was an interesting thing that I did not really know about it until I actually read this. And as a final comment, there's a cost to everything that we do. There's a cost of doing nothing, and there's a cost of doing something. And it's up to all of you to try and weigh the balance of which way you want to take it. It's a difficult choice, and I appreciate what you're doing, but it is going to be a hard one to figure out between all the testimony what to do. So with that, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much. Priscilla Olivares. Priscilla, we have you registered on behalf of Immigrant Legal Resource Center in South against HB 7. Is that correct?
That's correct,
Go
Chairman.
right ahead.
My name is Priscilla Olivares, and I'm a policy attorney at the Immigrant Legal Resource Center. I'm also a Texan, born and raised in this great state. I'm here today to respectfully ask this committee to vote no on HB 7. I've been a practicing attorney for nearly 13 years, and I have dedicated that time to defending the due process rights of my clients, many who were asylum seekers. Operation Lone Star is an affront to advocates like myself who take seriously the duty to protect the rights of all individuals. Operation Lone Star's sole purpose is to unlawfully target migrants and prevent them from seeking safety in the United States. Under Operation Lone Star, migrants are routinely apprehended and stripped of their dignity, respect, and constitutional rights. The charges filed against migrants have failed to pass legal muster, as there is mounting evidence that many of the trespassing charges filed were fabricated. Judges tasked with presiding over Operation Lone Star cases have made anti-immigrant statements and openly welcomed anti-immigrant groups to come to Texas. HB 7 would codify these harms and create a border protection court that would further violate the due process rights of migrants who are attempting to seek asylum. I want to respectfully remind the court that seeking asylum is a right under our nation's laws. I want to respectfully ask the committee to be true to what we have said on paper as a country. We as a nation have committed to protecting the rights of all, including asylum seekers and including people of color. The drafters of HB 7 aim to violate that commitment and the commitment we have to treat all individuals with dignity and respect. It is your duty, committee, to stop the drafters from violating these rights. Texas deserves impartial courts that protect the due process rights of all individuals, regardless of their race or national origin. Thank you.
Thank you. And we'll show you're opposed to HB 7.
Strongly opposed, Chairman, yes.
Any questions, members? Thank you.
Thank you.
Tom Glass. Now, Tom, we show you've registered for Texas Constitutional Enforcement and Self for HB 7. Is that correct?
Correct.
Go right ahead, sir.
I'd like to thank Chairman Ginn and the Speaker for Chairman Ginn for leading on this, and the Speaker for designated as a low number and giving it priority. We've heard from a number of witnesses today that we don't have the resources needed to address the problems we've got. And this bill, in my opinion, is designed to do that very thing, to meet the logistical needs of the operation to secure the safety of Texans. The context of all of this is that we are in a situation where the way the process is working today is we tell people, don't go to the ports of entry and get processed in an orderly fashion for asylum or for immigration and that sort of thing. We say, go pay a bunch of money to the cartels and put the people you love in the tender mercies of the cartels to bring them across, and then we'll process. Our tax dollars, I'm deeply offended that our tax dollars are being used to create a magnet to draw immigrants who want a better life in this country and draw them into the maw and the hell that is being processed through the cartels. I want a system that makes very clear to the world that if you want to come to Texas, come to the ports of entry and get processed properly. Don't even try to go through the cartels because it's not good for you and it's not good for Texas. And this bill does that. So thank you.
Thank you, Tom. Any questions, members? Thank you very much. Do you want to do the interpreter now? Okay. Aaron Hernandez. Aaron, we have you registered for Texas Rising and Self against HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Go right ahead.
My name is Aaron Hernandez. I'm originally from the Gulf Coast, but I've been living the past 3 years in El Paso, learning about the importance of migration and asylum seekers. It's because of that I strongly oppose HB 7. The mere funding proposal of the legislation lends itself to massive funds from private industries, in short, lobbyists. On top of that, not only does it beg for private industries, but it begs for the legislator themselves to figure out a means of how to pay for this legislation. That's something that no one has been able to answer today. Unless the state legislator is prepared to go against their values of small government and anti-government spending, well, then they need to go against this legislation today. Furthermore, I'm disgusted by the proposal to fund early development in high schools rather than fund for our sciences, maths, histories, and arts. We can see that we're one of the lowest states in the country, but we would rather supply fresh high school students as Border Patrol. The main logistical issue comes down to finance legislators, but we know we can work on fixing our grid, working on bringing high-paying jobs to Texans, as well as working on public transport and providing support for these migrants.
Hold on. Anybody have any questions? Thank you very much, Aaron. Appreciate it. Are we going to be ready? All right, members, we're going to call 3 witnesses with an interpreter, and it's Korean interpreter. And so what I'm going to do is rather than 2 minutes, I'm going to give them 3. And so who is the interpreter? Would you come up to the microphone? Now, has she filled out a form? All right, so for the record and for our members, I'm going to be spelling a lot.
Okay.
Okay? So you are M-Y-U-N-G Kim. Is that not right? What?
My name is Hee-Suk Tyner. I'm an interpreter.
Hold on one second. So the procedure is you're going to stand by the witness, and you're the interpreter, but the witness will be testifying. And so I'm going to let you all kind of do it. Watch the light, but we're adding a minute for your testimony. So our witness, before I start the clock, you're M-Y-U-N-G Kim.
Yes.
And you have registered for WOORI Juntos and Self against HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes.
We're going to start 3 minutes, and I'll let you two work out how to exchange. Go right ahead.
오케이. 저는 우리 훈토스 멤버 김명진입니다. 저는 HB 법안을 반대합니다. 국경 지역의 모든 카운티가 특별 국경 보호단을 설립 후 HB7에 의해 운영되는 새로운 법정 시스템에게는 특별한 권한이 주어져 많은 이민자들의 권한이 침해당하고 범죄인 취급을 하며 무차별적이고 가혹한 처벌들이 난무할까 두렵습니다. 선량한 국경 지역 주민들이나 미국 시민들에게도 비합리적이고 억울한 법정 투쟁이 발생할 수도 있을 것으로 생각합니다. 이 국경 보호단에 따른 새로운 법정 시스템과 그에 관련된 여러 시설들을 교육 기관들이 텍사스 주민들의 세금과 기금으로 운영될 것으로 알고 있는데 이러한 비용들이 차라리 텍사스 주민들의 건강과 자연 보호에 상용되어야 한다고 생각합니다. 예를 들어 말하면 경제적 어려움에 보험비가 없어서 병원을 못 가는 많은 가난한 사람들을 위한 공공 시설을 확충하는 것입니다. 따라서 저는 HB 7을 강력히 반대합니다. 끝까지 들어주셔서 감사합니다.
My name is Kim Myung-jin.
Go right up to the mic.
My name is Kim Myung-jin. I'm a senior civic engagement fellow at Uri Wantos of Houston, Texas. I oppose HB 7. I'm afraid that through the provision of HB 7, more people will abuse their powers, violating human rights of many immigrants. Treat them as criminals and discriminate against them, and there will be even more rampant punishments. I believe this is irrational and unjust to increase the profiling of border residents and American citizens. The new core system under Border Protection Unit and related facilities and educational institutions will be funded by our taxpayer dollars. But those expenses should be used for Texans' health and nature protection. We would prioritize expanding public health facility for many lower-income households who cannot go to hospital because of economic hardship and high insurance costs. Therefore, I strongly oppose HB 7. Thank you for the time to listen to me. I oppose HB 7.
Thank you very much. You get an A for following the time very well.
정확히 지키셨.
And so members, any questions? Thank you so much.
네, 감사합니다.
Thank you very much.
And if the interpreter would stay, we're going to call the next witness.
이렇게 들어가시면 되고요. 아니요, 가져가시면 돼요. 저는.
Yun Hwa Lee, YUNHWA Lee. And we have you registered for Worry, WOORI, Juntos and Self
거기에서 듣고
against HB 7. Is that correct?
있는 걸로.
Yes, sir.
Then go right ahead.
읽으시면 됩니다.
제 이름은 이연아입니다. HB20이 위험한 법안이면 HB7 또한 무시무시한 법안입니다. HB20에 의해 창설돼 국경보호단에 관련하여 HB7에 따라 새롭게 조직된 기관들로 하여금 주 정부의 예산과 민간이 기부한 금액으로 건설되는 국경 장벽을 감시 감독토록 할 것입니다. 이러한 법안은 주의 사법을 표적으로 삼고 무기화함으로써 이러한 제도들이 그들의 재정적 안정과 미래가 이민자들을 감금하는 데 의존해야만 하는 국경지역 사회를 만들도록 할 것입니다. 이런 조직에 쓰여질 예산과 비용을 텍사스 주민들에게 잦은 기후재난으로 발생하는 위험과 건강 침해가 우려되는 국경지역 전반에 걸친 기반시설의 확충에 사용함으로써 근본적이고 실질적인 문제를 해결할 수 있을 것입니다. 살기 좋은 텍사스를 세상 사람들이 기피하는 텍사스로 이어질까 심히 염려가 됩니다. 텍사스 주민으로서 HB7 법안이 통과되는 것을 완강히 반대합니다. 끝까지 들어주셔서 감사합니다.
My name is Yun Hwa Lee, and I am a senior civic engagement fellow at Uri Wantos of Houston, Texas. HB 20 is a dangerous bill, the fearsome bill. With the Border Protection Force to be created under HB 20, it will be our state and taxpayer funds that will fuel this unjust supervision and barrier being built. This is targeting and weaponizing the state's judiciary. This anti-immigration bill will allow those institutions to create border committee whose financial security and future must depend on incarcerating immigrants. Funding money that would be spent on those organizations could be used to address fundamental and a real problem by investing in infrastructure across the border, where Texans are at risk and health posed by frequent climate catastrophes. I am deeply concerned that Texas,
I
which is
need to interrupt. Are you talking about HB 7 or 20?
HB 7.
All right, go right ahead.
Interpreter apologize for misspoke.
Don't worry, you sound great.
I deeply concerned that Texas, which is a good place to live now, will be unsafe to live. As a resident of Texas, I strongly oppose the passing of a HB 7. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much. Appreciate you all. Any questions? Thank you so much. We have one more.
Mr. Chairman, can I just say something real quick? I just want to clarify that we're on HB 7.
Correct.
And not HB 20. I think a lot of the testimony so far has obviously been about HB 20, and HB 20 and HB 7 are two very different bills. And I also want to point out, a lot of the testimony has talked about the creation of new courts, which was something in the original bill. The substitute doesn't create new courts. It creates a border protection court program to help existing courts handle increased caseloads, to be managed by the Office of Court Administration, who will ensure that resources are placed where needed. This would potentially include visiting judges, court clerks, court reporters, et cetera, just to clarify.
Just so everybody knows, the author of the bill is just clarifying for the committee and for the public the specifics of his bill versus the bill that we're not on yet. Thank you. Next, I call MYOUNG Soon RYOO with again Worry Juntos and self against HB 7. Is that correct?
맞죠? Yes.
Thank you. Go right ahead.
네, 읽으시면 됩니다.
안녕하세요. 저는 우리 훈토스의 유명순입니다. 제가 알기로는 텍사스 정부에서 HB20를 통해 40억 불의 예산을 들여 새로운 국경 보호단을 만들려고 하고 있다 합니다. 여기에 HB7을 통해 텍사스 국경 지역의 모든 카운티가 특별 국경 보호 법원을 설립하도록 허용하면 인종차별과 인권 침해를 초래할 가능성이 높아집니다. HB7 법안이 통과되면 국경 지역 사회는 커다란 재정 압박을 느끼고 폭력과 테러 등의 범죄들이 많이 발생할 것입니다. 텍사스에서 정말로 필요한 것은 막대한 세금을 이 법안에 쓰기보다는 국경 지역 텍사스인들이 국경 군사 단지에 의존하지 않고 지속 가능하고 전문적인 경력을 쌓을 수 있는 경로를 찾을 수 있도록 하고, 또한 지역 사회를 서로 대립시키기보다는 파괴가 아닌 존엄성에 기반한 법안을 작성함으로써 두 집단 모두에 기여할 수 있도록 해야 할 것입니다. 위원님, 다시 한번 강력하게 반대함을 말씀드립니다. 제 말을 끝까지 들어주셔서 감사합니다.
Hello, my name is Myung-Sun Ryu from Uri Wantos. From what I read, the Texas government is trying to create a new border guard with a budget of $4 billion through HB 20. On top of that, allowing all
Again,
counties.
HB 7.
여기 20.
She said 7, but we just want to remember we're talking about HB 7.
Yes.
On top of that, allowing all counties along the Texas border to establish special border protection courts through HB 7 increases the likelihood of inviting racism, human rights violation. If the HB 7 bill is passed, border committees will face great financial pressure, and there will be many crimes, such as violence and terrorism. What Texas really needs is, rather than spending huge tax dollars on this bill, it needs a law based on dignity, not restriction, rather than turning communities against each other, so that border Texans can find sustainable professional career path without resorting to border militarization. We need to make sure we serve both groups by writing legislation based on dignity, not destruction. Dear representatives, once again, I strongly object. Thank you for listening to me all the way.
Thank you very much. And we'll note it's opposition to HB 7. Thank you so much. Any questions? Thank you. That will be it for right now for you. Roy Boyd. Roy, we have you registered for Goliad County Sheriff and self for HB 7. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. I am here in support of HB 7. I only have two items that I would like to discuss with regards to it, and I apologize in advance if those items have been altered as a result of being reviewed by text ledge. The first one is section, where it says section 421.902 with regards to border facilities. I would hope that that would include jail space as something that can be funded, because there's obviously a shortage of space with regards to the number of smuggling cases that are taking place, not only in the border region, but even across South Texas where we're at. The other is section 421A, where it discusses border damage or damage compensation to private property. That private property damage compensation, according to the bill, when I read it, was only for the border region. Now, I am not in the border region as far as the legislature goes, and so our landowners in Goliad County and the counties around me would not qualify. But we are having damage as a result of having to chase cartel operatives and smugglers that are coming through our jurisdictions and causing damage. Not only that, but we have also had them set up and create stash sites on remote ranches and cause considerable amount of damage. And that is all that I ask. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Manuel Guzman. Manuel, we show you registered for Texas Rising against HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Go right ahead.
Good afternoon, committee. I was born and raised in El Paso, Texas, which will directly affect us if it passes. So us from El Paso and different border regions around the communities that are in the border will have firsthand experience how immigration affects the border. Texas is in need of funding in various other fields, such as education, where according to the U.S. News and World Report, we ranked 35th across the whole country. And then we have an electric grid that failed us over and over again. So I feel like it is highly irresponsible for funds to go to this proposed Border Protection Corps program when we already have the Department of Homeland Security, which receives billions in funding already. And thus there is no need to fund this other program when we already have one. And empowering counties in the border will really tip the scales in terms of law and order, where we have seen that separate court systems are unequal, and previous court systems established by Operation Lone Star has never worked that favorably, even though they received $9 billion in funding. And so for the reasons previously stated, I am highly against HB 7, and I yield my time.
Thank you for your testimony. Any questions, members? Thank you so much. Corinne Martinez. We show you're registered for the Texas Public Policy Foundation, neutral on HB 7. Is that correct?
This is correct.
Go right ahead.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Corinne Martinez. I'm campaign director for Secure and Sovereign Texas at the Texas Public Policy Foundation. And I'm here today to testify on the bill, and let me explain the reason why. You have heard the border is not secure. There are many problems at the border, starting with the Mexican cartel smuggling the migrants. Even if we have issues in the US, they're bringing them to us. They're also using, unfortunately, the migrants to overwhelm Border Patrol, while they can use the territory between ports of entry to do drug trafficking and smuggle drugs. And then we have the border communities who are being victims of what's going on, with an increase in crime, with landowners having damages. We've heard about that to their properties. We've heard of ranchers telling us that they have to teach their very young kids to handle handguns so that they would feel their kids are safe on their land. This is happening in Texas. And so we think this bill is going in the right direction, because it would create programs that will help rein in the lawlessness that is currently happening at the border, in the border region. The United States is a nation of laws, so we should enforce our laws. The only issues we have, and that's why we remain neutral, is we have concern with the last section, subchapter Q, that would create a border protection economic development initiative. We think this is probably problematic right now, but we're happy and eager to work with Representative Gillen's office on that. We still think this is going in the right direction, and this is needed, and Texas should act. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions, members? Representative Anchia.
Yeah, Karin, welcome. What's your definition of a secure border? Or the Public Policy Foundation?
I would say a border where we know who is entering.
Have we ever had a secure border?
I don't know that I can answer.
So you know how many migrants were encountered at the U.S.-Mexico border, I don't know, under Ronald Reagan in 1980, 83, 84?
I do not have that number.
1,615,844. In 2020, you know what that number was?
Please remind.
1,659,206. In 2021. It's about the same. In the Bush years, it was 1,643,679. Was the border secure in any of these eras?
I think we still should secure the border today.
No, but my question is, would you define them as secure under any of these eras?
Well, there probably might have been issues also, but again, the subject is what are we doing now?
But my question is not that. My question is, first was, what is your definition?
Yep.
I gave you data. What is your conclusion on whether the border was secured under any of those eras?
With only the numbers you gave me, it sounds like it wasn't. I don't have the full scope of the information.
Thank you.
Any other questions, members? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Sarah Ramey. Sarah, we show you have registered on behalf of Migrant Center for Human Rights and Self against HB 7. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Go right ahead.
I was not planning on testifying on HB 7. I'm here mostly for HB 20.
Well, but you need to focus on 7.
But I am happy to share a couple of comments on why I'm opposed to HB 7.
Very good. Go right ahead on 7.
So first off, the oversight mechanism that's envisioned in HB 7 does not allow for a bipartisan makeup. The HB 7 proposal as written has 4 people appointed by the Lieutenant Governor and 4 people appointed by the Speaker of the House. There's no language in the bill at present to indicate that those individuals will need to come from across party lines or in any other way have a diversity of perspectives or background that would allow that Oversight Commission to thoroughly consider any proposals or recommendations or carry out impartial and full investigations. So we are recommending that that be changed to ensure that oversight body is more diverse and more bipartisan. And I will be back for HB 20. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions, members? Yeah, Chairman Guillen has a question.
The
Yes.
Oversight Committee in HB 7 is taken out in the sub, so there's no more committee in there. I instead have it in that other bill I laid out earlier. Thank you.
What you might do is check with Chairman Guillen's office and get a copy of the substitute.
For sure. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Charles Maley. Charles, we show you registered for South Texans Property Rights Association and Self for HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That's
Go right ahead.
Good evening, Chairman Hunter and members. My name is Charles Maley, and I'm Advocacy Director for South Texans Property Rights Association, testifying in favor of House Bill 7. With a membership base dispersed across geographic South Texas, STPRA dedicates a significant portion of our time and efforts striving to build better and stronger relationships between property owners, state, local, and federal law enforcement, and our state, local, and federal decision makers. In that role, we have a unique opportunity to gain insight into the many different facets of border security, or the lack thereof. The state of Texas has taken a strong stance against illegal immigration, drug smuggling, and human trafficking that begin along our southern border, but adversely affect each and every one of our Texas 254 counties. Even though it can be shown that cartel business negatively impacts all of our counties, there is still more than one local jurisdiction along the border that chooses to take different approaches to public policy than the state. But for those choosing to participate in state-led efforts, there are still substantial operational difficulties. While our organization is neither expert in law enforcement nor prosecution, we are highly supportive of any and all efforts to secure our southern border from cartel-driven criminal activities, and we welcome the assistance that this bill would provide to property owners that are bearing the brunt of those activities and local jurisdictions that are struggling to keep up with the increased need of personnel and capital to meet their ongoing local responsibilities while also managing the increased workload of enforcement and prosecution of cartel-related criminal activities. Specifically, Representative Guillen, thank you for the provision of direct financial assistance to property owners, many of whom suffer damages and financial loss on a daily basis. One of our members, in fact, from Cotulla, just earlier in the day, sent me pictures of damage to 3 different gates on his property yesterday morning from a pursuit involving a Ford Raptor at 5:30 in the morning. His brother, just a few miles north, had 10 incursions in 6 days last week. I mean, so it's on.
Thank you, and
committee. Appreciate it.
We've got you for HB 7. Any questions, members? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Alexa Caranco. Alexa, we have you registered for Texas Rising against HB 7. Is that correct?
Correct.
Go right ahead.
Good evening, representatives. My name is Alexa Carranco, and I'm from the borderland of El Paso, Texas, and Ciudad Juarez. I'm here today as a student leader of Texas Rising at the University of Texas at El Paso. Today, I'll be testifying against House Bill 7. I'm sure many of you have heard of the migrant surge that El Paso had a few months ago. You all heard of the narrative around migrants being invaders and aliens. The governor sent state troopers to the border to quote unquote protect our community. But what you didn't know is that you got it all wrong. More troops does not equate to effective reform. It is not only a waste of resources, it is also a waste of money and manpower that can be used for public education, healthcare, and community funding. This racist and hurtful narrative around migrants being criminals is harmful to the borderland and our greater migrant community. By creating funding through the Border Protection Court program, you hand the power to the states and the local counties that should not manage immigration enforcement. Communities like El Paso and our government will be the ones to face the consequences of this bill. Time and time again, our community is left to clean up the mess and the legislation that this bill creates. Please listen to the communities like mine when voting for this bill. Please vote no for this bill. Thank you for your time and consideration.
Thank you, Alexa. Any questions, members? Thank you very much. Sandra Witten. Sandra, we have you registered for yourself, neutral on HB 7. Is that correct?
That is correct, but I need to make an amendment. If I can change it to for.
Okay, well, we'll do it here.
Yes, sir.
So your name's Sandra Witten.
Yes, sir.
You're representing yourself.
Correct.
You have a registration that says neutral on HB 7, but you're asking us to change it to for HB 7.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
That is correct.
Go right ahead.
All right, thank you very much. This bill is actually pretty amazing. It's giving the loopholes that we've been lacking from the law enforcement and the judges and the prosecution side to be able to fill the holes that are necessary to actually take care of border security. We're not talking about immigration. We're not talking about anything else. We're simply talking about filling a void. All of the problems that are being presented today have everything to do with a void that is here. Representative Guillen is trying to fill that void with making sure the legislation is in place to make sure that these problems that many of the people that are against this bill have brought up before us today. So I think it's very important that we support this. There was some original language that was a little bit tacky. That's why I put that I was neutral on it. But after speaking with several sheriffs and other lawmakers and judges, we came back and said, no, this is something that we're absolutely for. So I appreciate your time.
Any questions, members? Thank you very much. Sophia Avant-Mir. Sophia, we have you registered on behalf of Texas Rising against HB 7. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Go right ahead.
Good afternoon. My name is Sophia Avant-Mir, and I also live in the border town of El Paso, Texas. I'm also here on behalf of Texas Rising. I strongly oppose HB 7. Taxpayer dollars do not need to be used to further over-police and militarize the border. Border communities need improved access to healthcare, stronger infrastructure, and education and careers outside of the militarization industrial complex before we need more destructive legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you. Alondra Andrade. Now, Alondra, we have you registered, and I'm just going to spell it TAHIRIH, Justice Center and Self against HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Go right ahead.
Hello, members of the House of Committee of State Affairs. My name is Alondra Andrade, and I'm here in opposition of HB 7. I work for Tahirih Justice Center, a nonprofit legal advocacy organization that since 1997 has been serving survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and other abuses. Tahirih has been working with survivors in Southeast Texas since 2009, collaborating closely with our community to ensure that immigrant survivors of gender-based violence can live safely and with dignity. We're deeply concerned about the impact that HB 7 will have on the ability of survivors to access protections available under U.S. law. HB 7's border court proposal could codify the role of Texas law in immigration enforcement, cutting off access to the protective U.S. legal system for many immigrant survivors of domestic violence, sexual assault, human trafficking, and other forms of gender-based violence. Investing in alternative pathways for integrating asylum seekers into communities, as well as trauma-informed approaches to violence by law enforcement, public health, and community-based supports would be far more effective in addressing gender-based violence across Texas. The Tahirih Justice Center and myself asked the committee to oppose HB 7 and to stand with survivors of gender-based violence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you very much. Luke Squires. Luke, we have you registered on behalf of yourself against HB 7. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Go right ahead.
Good afternoon. I am Luke Squires from El Paso, Texas, and a student at UTEP, and I'm here today to object House Bill 7. House Bill 7 and House Bill 20 go hand in hand when it comes to the detriment of the border. The first problem is the Special Border Protection Courts. If we learn anything from Operation Lone Star, these courts completely circumvent due process, and this vague jurisdictional power that's proposed is a dangerous legal precedent that can set dangerous implications for immigrants. Secondly, is the new Border Militarization Education Grant Program. Border communities are in great need for better education, an education that doesn't lead them into a militarized force that detriments the very community that they live in. This bill enables House Bill 20 to a greater reach over the lives of the border. And I will be back for House Bill 20. I yield my time.
You'll be back for House Bill 20.
Yes.
What's that? So we got to, because you made comments to both bills, you're testifying on HB 7 and you're against HB 7, correct?
I am against House Bill 7 and,
We're not at, that's why I've got to keep you clean. So you're Luke Squires on behalf of yourself, and you're testifying right now against HB 7, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stephen Wu. Stephen, we have you listed for the Wuri, Juntos, and Self against HB 7. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Go right ahead.
All right. Chairman Hunter and members, my name is Stephen Wu. I am the organizing and policy manager of Wuri Juntos. We're an immigrant rights organization advancing the safety of Asian and all immigrants across Texas. And I'm here to testify against HB 7. I'm going to disagree a little bit with Chairman Guillen. I think HB 7 works pretty complementary to many of the other criminalizing bills that we're hearing today, HB 20, HB 1600. And similar to those other bills aiming
I
to...
need you to really just focus on 7.
Sure.
Because when we mention the other bills, then I have to bring you back to it because you're going on either past or future. So you're on 7, right?
I'm on 7.
Go right ahead.
Long story short, I think that HB 7 aims to institutionalize Operation Lone Star in Texas. We've already seen hundreds of cases where migrants arrested under OLS were denied due process, having to spend weeks to months incarcerated with no legal representation, with extremely high bonds, and held in terrible jail conditions. This enhanced border protection court system that was amended with the committee substitute, I believe still adjudicates for a new proposed harsh felony offense under Chapter 51, which is created under a separate bill. If we're crossing or attempting to cross into Texas from Mexico through a non-port of entry. And this is going to continue denying migrants their due process and constitutional protections. And then there's the Border Institution Grant Program, which financially incentivizes colleges, universities to hire and retain faculty and staff to teach or research on fields related to border safety. This is not only indoctrination, it's taxpayer dollars and unchecked private money used to build a border workforce that sees migrants as the enemy. With limited opportunities already within the region, we should be investing in areas that actually improve residents' public health and mental health, like water.
We're going to have to end, but we'll note you're against HB 7.
Can I have some time back
No.
since?
Yeah, I've given everybody the time, and we're going to keep it. So you're against HB 7. Any questions, members? Thank you, and I think you've given us a sheet, haven't you?
I have, yes.
So we'll make sure everybody has a copy. Thank you. Kyle, Jacqueuez. Now, Kyle, we have you registered for Texas Rising against HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Right ahead.
Good afternoon, committee members. My name is Kyle Huckes. I live in El Paso, Texas, and I'm also a student with Texas Rising at the University of Texas at El Paso. I'm here to fundamentally oppose HB 7 on the basis that this legislation that intends to enhance national security only amounts to wasted resources. We spent a lot of taxpayer money in the past on border policy that targets migrants at the border, whether it's National Guard stationed at our borderland or busing migrants to Washington, D.C. It can be framed however it wants, but it's always going to be about immigration. Ultimately, we run the risk of increasing injustice at the border, as previously seen under Operation Lone Star. This means courts could operate unfairly, operate in an untimely manner, or perpetuate the demonization on the border itself. Instead of letting the overhead talking points and hateful rhetoric guide us towards such divisive legislation, I encourage you to put all your ears to the voices of the borderland and divert our resources and funding to things that need it, as mentioned before, like public transportation, education, health, for example. El Paso is a resilient community that knows immigration all too well. Please, let's end the cycle of exhausting resources on fear-mongering solutions. I strongly encourage this committee to vote no on HB 7, if not for its waste, for its dignity and respect of migrants alike in the midst of their most vulnerable moments. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Kyle. Any questions? Thank you, sir. Alexis Bay. Alexis, we show you've registered for the Texas Civil Rights Project and SELF, and you're against HB 7, correct?
This is correct.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. My name is Alexis Bay. I am the Legislative Coordinator for the Beyond Borders program at the Texas Civil Rights Project. I am also a proud border Texan from the Rio Grande Valley. We are very much against HB 7, even with its substitution, because if there's one thing as a border Texan that I am tired of, it is the overspending on border security and the underspending on the actual needs of the borderlands. We have community members back in the valley who, if there's even a little bit of flooding, could lose their home in the colonias. Colonias do not have street lighting, do not have proper drainage. We have some of the worst rates of people lacking health care and health insurance, and we have extremely high rates of diabetes in the valley. While we have these major issues in the borderlands, we see no funding from this legislature to try to address the actual concerns of community. And instead, we have seen a steady rise in overspending on border security, and HB 7 is contributing to this. The reality is we've already seen this in OLS. Operation Lone Star has had, in the past 2 years, millions of dollars funneled into the program, and now we're looking at $4.6 billion for Lone Star. But the truth is that more than likely in the next legislative session, you're going to have more bills like HB 7 asking for more money in grants for these programs that do nothing to help border communities. Instead, it will create more militarization, and it will create more of a narrative that is not true about who immigrants are, why they come to the country, why they enter the country as they do, and also is not reflective of who is the border community. The grants within HB 7 go solely to law enforcement and to border militarization. In many instances, trying to show themselves as a way to maybe create jobs within the community, but we've already seen that in many instances, this doesn't act, these jobs don't,
Thank you, and we'll show that you're against HB 7. Thank you so much. Any questions? Thank you.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Oh, yeah, I'm sorry, Representative.
Hey, Alexis, thanks for being here. So you were talking about the grant program and your concerns about that portion of the bill. Are there any other parts of the bill that you want to highlight for me that are problematic?
absolutely. I mean, any funding.
Now, Representative, I said a deal early on that if they don't finish, I don't want to do the old supplement. So if you could be more specific, but if she didn't finish her testimony, I don't want to give her an unfair advantage over everybody else where they get to supplement. So if you could be specific, because I asked it the first time of State Affairs and others, and I don't want people going over because they didn't get in their 2 minutes. Just if you guide her specifically.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Appreciate the courtesy. How about Chapter 421A, the compensation fund? Any issue there?
Is that the land compensation?
It's the Border Property Damage Compensation Fund.
Right. I mean, you know, our feelings towards that is that, again, like I said, at the end of the day, while we acknowledge that there's definitely property damage that is caused, again, that is more the symptom of bad state and federal policy. If immigrants were given a humane way to enter the country through the ports of entry, you would definitely see a major decrease in that. And so that would be the answer to that, not just compensating, because it's putting a Band-Aid on a problem as opposed to getting to the root of the issue.
Do you have a specific problem with the border institution grant program, or is that okay?
No, that is definitely not okay. We, especially in the Valley, so many of the best jobs are tied to border enforcement, and it creates a lot of, I think, conflict within families and even just for individuals of the best jobs you can get are with Border Patrol or in border enforcement. And we definitely, in the Rio Grande Valley, and I think this is true for the whole border region, we would like new opportunities and better opportunities for careers and just more opportunities in people's professional life beyond border enforcement.
Okay, and are you okay with the Border Protection Infrastructure Fund?
No. If anything, the infrastructure we need help with is drainage, especially in the Valley. And again, we have all sorts of institutions in the border, and especially in the Rio Grande Valley, that are all about border security. But again, we still have major problems with flooding, and it always goes unaddressed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Any other questions? Thank you so much. Lisette Castillo. Lisette, we have you registered for Detention Watch Network and Self against HB 7. Is that correct?
That's right.
Go right ahead.
Hi, my name is Liz Castillo. I live in the Rio Grande Valley, and I'm the organizing manager with Detention Watch Network, a national organization made up of over 100 organizations across the country. I'm here as a border resident and on the behalf of DWN to testify against HB 7 and also HB 20. The bills that this committee is considering are not just anti-immigrant, they are dangerous and extreme. HB 7 will create a separate court system for people criminalized through Operation Lone Star, and also HB 20.
You're right now on 7.
I'm talking about
correct?
how HB 7
Very good. Go right
criminalizes
ahead.
people. Over the last 2 years, policies like Operation Lone Star have wreaked havoc in communities across Texas, from a dramatic increase in racially motivated traffic stops and fatal Wild West high-speed pursuits to the gross ballooning of the criminalization and detention of migrants. The damage of OLS has been harrowing. Our leadership should be figuring out how to meet Texans' real needs, including the ones that Alexis just raised, and immigrant community members' actual wants and desires, not strategizing on how to compound harm through bills like HB 7. Years from now, future generations will look back to this moment in history, perhaps in the textbooks, and they will wonder, as I hope we have all done at some point when learning about certain dark moments in our history, how it is even possible that such blatantly targeted discriminatory efforts even made it this far. I call on the members of this committee to do the right thing and to vote against HB 7 and HB 20. If you refuse, you will each individually
You're
not
on
just have
HB
this.
7, right?
Yes, you will not each have the shameful distinction of standing on the wrong side of history. You will also bear direct responsibility for the almost certain additional violence and deaths that can only inevitably follow bills designed by nature to promote vigilantism and to increase the capacity of the courts to rubber stamp the targeted hypercriminalization and detention of immigrant Black and brown bodies. What follows is on you all. If you're worried about harms, we should be listening to people with real experience. And as a border resident myself, let me be clear on who this is, the people who are criminalized by Operation Lone Star.
And we want to make sure you're against HB 7, correct?
Yes.
Thank you. Catherine Torres. Catherine, we show you're registered for the Frontera Fund and Self against HB 7. Is that correct?
Correct.
Go right ahead.
Hello, my name is Kathy Torres. I live in Edinburgh, Texas, and I'm a community organizer in the Rio Grande Valley. I oppose HB 7. From healthcare to education and everything in between, border communities like the Rio Grande Valley are extremely disenfranchised, and it's due to lack of investment from the state. Funding systems that contribute to the over-policing and hyper-militarization of border communities does nothing to address the very systemic issues that are preventing us from sustaining ourselves and raising our families with dignity and safety. The Valley and border communities across Texas deserve more than this. We are more than pawns in a political power play or some talking point during election cycles. We are humans whose voices deserve to be heard without being subjected to a school-to-border military complex pipeline. Invest in equitable healthcare programs that include reproductive health care or systems that address the climate crisis heavily impacting our state's infrastructure, especially in places like the Valley. I urge you to vote against HB 7. Thank you.
Catherine, thank you very much. Any questions, members? Thank you. Yvonne Diaz. Yvonne, we show you've registered on behalf of Texas Rising and Self against HB 7. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Go right ahead.
My name is Yvonne Diaz with Texas Rising in El Paso, Texas. I am against Bill HB 7. I have traveled along with many of my colleagues to talk about the dangers of this bill and many other anti-immigrant bills. We're not going to mention them yet. I hope you all are aware that the horror stories and the fear these bills have created in our communities. But today, I'm not going to talk about that. Like, you probably are aware of all the horror stories that happen at the border. But I want to talk about the money, because that seems to be given more regard than human lives, unfortunately. Operation Lone Star, I believe, has received, more than $9 billion, not millions, $1 billion. It claims to be protecting our borders, but the amount of so-called protection is disproportionate to the amount of money it has received. Last December, Mayor Eliezer in El Paso declared a state of emergency in the hopes to receive some relief, but the city did not receive any help from the state. DPS was sent for a little bit, and there was only an increase on traffic tickets. If passed, this bill will give money to the county for a special border protection court for border issues. Does this mean that the traffic tickets will increase? Our city of El Paso has proven that more militarization and policing in our communities does not work. This bill, besides being dangerous, is extremely vague. It does not protect or provide money to our community's real needs. Taxpayers right now are talking. We need access to healthcare, transportation, education, clean air, electrical grid. Vote no on HB 7 today. Thank you.
Yvonne, thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much. Franz Schimmel. Franz Schimmel. Franz Schimmel. Shows that Franz registered on behalf of Texas Impact and Self against HB 7. So we'll note the registration and that he didn't testify. Samantha Singleton. Samantha, we show you've registered for the Border Network for Human Rights and Self against HB 7. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman, the committee members. My name is Samantha Singleton. I'm the Policy Director at the Border Network for Human Rights located in El Paso, Texas, and I am against House Bill 7. I just want to say that I stand in solidarity with all of my fellow El Pasoans that have come up here and stated the reasons. Just to keep stating them over and over and be redundant, to me, doesn't make a lot of sense. You've already heard why we are against House Bill 7, and the answer is not going to change with me standing up here and providing you with the same information. Thank you.
But I want, for the record, and you're against HB 7.
I am against.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any questions? Thank you so much. Nicole Ma. And Nicole, we show that you registered for WOORI, W-O-O-R-I, Juntos and Self against HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Go right ahead.
My name is Nicole Ma. I am the Organizing and Policy Associate of WOORI Juntos, and I'm strongly against HB 7. In border protection under this bill, it's a false illusion. It will not be protecting the border nor its people. I want to speak a little bit on that. It is an anti-immigrant bill. It impacts any immigrants that live here who are asylum seekers, and given the unclean track record of our border enforcement, how do you differentiate that? I want to ask that. HB 7 is the key that makes all other anti-immigrant bills work. It provides punishing legal infrastructure in multiple avenues and funding anti-immigrant culture building, and yet this will not deter migrants to our southern border. HB 7 creates a gateway to investing into an empire of violence and terrorism built upon an unjust justice system. This is an equation for destruction for border communities and communities facing significant socioeconomic factors. No one should be criminalized for wanting to seek a better life. How are we to properly protect our communities if no one else is there due to lack of health resources, proper water infrastructure to prevent flooding, and no opportunities to invest in the most dire needs of these communities through a well-rounded education that is not tunnel vision towards militarization? By awarding funds to border communities rather than investing into developing and improving quality of life for their constituents and addressing their concerns, it incentivizes counties to focus more on infrastructures targeting immigrants. Additionally, it sets up a foundation in these jurisdictions to rely on border militarization as the vision and career dependency for its future generations. It incentivizes people to take on careers that will ultimately not help the border communities and prevent lasting infrastructure in the long run. These communities will continue to suffer as long as these root concerns are not met by you, our state leaders. You should not be creating a dangerous barrier of entry for those who are seeking refuge from violence or poverty.
Right.
I'm against
And
HB 7.
you're against HB 7.
That is correct.
We do have your sheet that we've passed out to the members.
Yes, thank you.
Any questions? Thank you. Bob, is it L-I-B-A-L? Bob, I don't know if it's Libel or LaBelle, but I'll let you tell us. Bob, it shows that you've registered for Human Rights Watch against HB 7. Is that correct?
That's right, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Chair. And yes, it's Bob Libel, and I work with the U.S. Program of Human Rights Watch, and I'm based here in Austin, Texas.
And you're against HB 7?
I am against HB 7 and also HB 20, but we'll get to that at about 1 a.m., I think.
So we're right now HB 7, right?
HB 7, we're talking.
There you go, don't mention the other.
All right. Human Rights Watch is a nonprofit, independent organization that investigates allegations of human rights violations in more than 90 countries around the world, including the United States, and we are opposed to HB 7. Human Rights Watch has previously documented the impact of Texas's $4.4 billion border law enforcement program called Operation Lone Star, and we have found that the program has notably failed in its mission to deny Mexican cartels and other smugglers the ability to move drugs and people into Texas, but has led to injuries and deaths, has consistently violated the rights of U.S. citizens and migrants, and has suppressed freedoms of association and expression. HB 7 would codify much of the separate Border Protection Court program that would institutionalize much of the separate and unequal system of arresting, jailing, and prosecuting people along the border, piloted under Operation Lone Star. In 2 separate complaints, Texas civil rights organizations analyzed 484 arrests under Operation Lone Star and found severe racial disparities and clear indications of profiling based on race and national origin, and the program is currently under investigation by the U.S. Department of Justice. Operation Lone Star has aggressively used selective enforcement of the offense of criminal trespass and the newly created segregated criminal legal system with separate dockets, separate public defender assignments, separate jails, and separate booking facilities. Simply put, people perceived as migrants do not face the same criminal penalties for the same actions. HB 7 would codify much of this system by establishing these new special border protection court programs, and so therefore we oppose HB 7.
Bob, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And again, we'll note against HB 7.
Against HB 7.
Any questions? Thank you.
Thank you.
Samantha Serna Uribe. Samantha, we show you registered for MALDEF, Mexican American Legal Defense and Educational Fund against HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes,
Go right ahead.
thank you. My name is Chairman Hunter, Vice Chair Hernandez, and members of the committee. My name is Samantha Serna Uribe, and I'm a staff attorney with MALDEF. I testify against today a House Bill 7 in its entirety, and my testimony will focus on a specific area of concern in the bill. House Bill 7 creates a new, quote, border-related offense, which includes an offense associated with or involving a person unlawfully entering or attempting to enter the state by crossing the Texas-Mexico border at any place other than a port of entry. House Bill 7 encroaches on the federal field of immigration by creating this border-related offense by creating border-related offenses that are already regulated by federal law. As explained by the U.S. Supreme Court in Arizona v. U.S., states are precluded from regulating conduct in a field that Congress, acting within its own proper authority, has determined must be regulated by its exclusive governance. In particular, federal immigration law already governs unlawful presence in the United States. The Texas Senate Committee on Border Security's interim report to the 88th legislature stated, quote, in the context of immigration, any state law that attempts to regulate immigration will be preempted since immigration authority is exclusively the responsibility of the federal government. MALDEF urges the committee to reject House Bill 7. Thank you for your time.
Samantha, thank you very much. Any questions, members? Thank you. Abel Vega. Abel, we show you've registered for the Rio, Texas Conference, UMC and self against HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Go right ahead, sir.
And then also, I do come testifying on behalf of Texas Impact as a board member.
You're not registered that way.
Okay.
We have you registered as Rio, Texas Conference, UMC and self against HB 7. Is that correct? Is that what we should use?
That's fine, sir.
Thank you. We'll just note that for the record. Go right ahead.
Okay. Yes, thank you. My name is Abel Vega, and I serve as the Director of Mission, Service, and Justice Ministries for the Rio, Texas Conference of the United Methodist Church. The Rio, Texas Conference boundaries are defined by 74 counties of South Texas and 450 miles of border from Brownsville to Del Rio. Historically, the United Methodist Church has been about ministry on both sides of the border and globally. We understand that the Church Universal is not beholden to borders. Ministry has and continues today to respond to the migrant, the sojourner, by offering respite, hospitality, legal support, advocacy, and accompaniment. Today, the bishops of Texas of the United Methodist Conferences, including our Bishop Robert Schnase, have signed on to a letter in solidarity with the Coalition of Texas Impact, speaking against the harm HB 7 and others will bring to the sojourner, the migrant, the immigrant, and the communities of color the church serves and is in communion with. The conviction of the church and response to God's mandate is to welcome the stranger. Throughout Scripture, the people of God are called to love sojourners in our midst, treating them as if they were one of your citizens and loving them as we do ourselves. Over the past 3.5 years, through the Border Collaboration Network, we are witnessing the emergence of networks nationwide and on both sides of the U.S. southern and northern borders and networks within the U.S. interior. These networks reflect people of various faiths and convictions committed to honoring the Imago Dei, the image of God as seen in the faces and the stories of the sojourner.
Thank you, sir, and we'll note you're against HB 7.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, sir. Fernando Garcia. Fernando, we show that you've registered for the Border Network for Human Rights and self against HB 7. Is that correct?
Indeed, against.
Go right ahead.
Against HB 7. Listen, I share all of the comments done by my peers, but I want to focus on one or two specific things. They go to the foundation of the legislation. of this legislation and others that we would not mention right now. And I do believe that this legislation, HB 7, the foundation of it is based on a distortion. It's the distortion of what is happening at the border. What is being painted at the border, some people had come up here saying that they are from El Paso, from other parts of the border, and they are painting the border with violence and mayhem. I'm in El Paso. I live in El Paso for more than 30 years already. And what they've been telling you, and what they've been telling you through the news and in the media, and some people is using it over and over, is that we have an invasion, we had violence and mayhem. That is a lie. That is not true. El Paso, Brownsville, Del Rio, McAllen, those cities are safer than Austin. And they deserve to be treated with respect and not with this vitriol and ideology. So it is important to recognize that this legislation, it is racist, anti-immigrant, and white supremacist. There is no other way to qualify this legislation. Finally, if this legislation passes, you will be responsible of criminalizing refugees, asylum seekers, children, and women. That's what you will be doing. So vote no on HB 7. Thank you.
Thank you very much, sir. Any questions? Thank you. Aaron Thorne. Aaron, we have you listed representing Texas Civil Rights Project and self against HB 7. Is that correct?
Correct.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. My name is Erin Thorne. I'm an attorney with the Texas Civil Rights Project, and I'm also a Board of Texan. I'm based in the city of Hidalgo. I want to address something Representative Guillen says that his substitute does not create separate court systems for border-related offenses, but I want to point out something. A lot of folks have come up here and talked about how the Operation Lone Star program is very instructive on how a lot of these programs are actually going to play out in real time, particularly on the court operations side. This creates an incentive for courts to prioritize heavy dockets of these border-related offenses and to make sure that those cases stay on their dockets no matter what happens. So in the Operation Lone Star context, what we've seen, for example, is appellate attorneys who are handling the appeals case for Operation Lone Star cases will go up to appellate courts and say, well, Your Honor, we understand, a significant portion of people under Operation Lone Star, before their case is even concluded, are deported from this country. Once they bond out, they are not able to go to their families. They go back to their home country. The criminal case remains pending. So what happens is that these folks are trying to fight this case from outside, and the county, knowing that these people are outside of this country, have been deported, instead of seeing that justice may be done, are hanging on to these cases because that's where the money is. And counties have gone in front of appellate courts and said basically that on the record. We understand, Your Honor, that justice isn't being done. We understand, Your Honor, that this person is not in this country anymore, but we need the money. And so although the new substitution does not create a separate court system, it creates that same perverse incentive. How many of these cases can you keep on your docket so you can get the money?
Thank you. And again, noted against HB 7.
Thank you.
Thank you. Representative Anchia.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You raised an interesting point about the perverse incentive here. For some of these monies, this could be a big revenue generator. And I've seen this in other contexts. When I was in law school in Louisiana, we used to go to Marksville Prison, and they would have detainees who had already served their sentences, but there was an incentive from the federal government paying the state government to keep them in Marksville Prison, even long past the sentence that had been given. They weren't going to be deported. In fact, these were Cuban detainees. They weren't going to be deported back to Cuba, but they also weren't going to be released. They just stayed in jail because it was a moneymaker for the parish. So do you think it would make sense if there are monies given to these local communities to expedite dockets, that there also be performance measures so that we don't have these perverse incentives, like clearing their dockets?
If there are those requirements on them, you will see those cases still blown out. Whatever the incentive is, the incentive in HB 7 is to take these border-related offenses and we'll give you money for them, shoot them in there. So whatever is incentivized, that's what's gonna happen. In that case, that was what was incentivized. This bill incentivizes making as much, a huge percentage of your docket as you can, make them these border-related offenses, because that's where the money is.
Thank you. Representative, any other questions? Thank you again. Sarah Syed. Sarah, we show you're with the Wuri Juntos and Self, and you're against HB 7. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Hunter and members of the House State Affairs Committee. My name is Sarah Sayed. I am the daughter of immigrants, granddaughter of refugees. I serve as the senior community organizer for Wuri Juntos. As my colleagues have put it, we are an immigrant rights group committed to supporting people of Asian descent and all immigrants in Texas. We are a part of a vast network of constituents made up of social workers, organizers, lawyers, doctors, retired veterans, pastors, students, and more. Many of which travel to share their personal testimonies with you, even given limited English proficiency and indigenous languages. I, along with many of my siblings here today, are here to oppose House Bill 7 and are against it passing. I'm certain today that the stories of our communities, provided in their native languages, will give you perspective you need to prevent overspending and criminalization under Operation Lone Star. We do not want to have Operation Lone Star as a permanent fixture in Texas public policy. We do not want to dedicate substantial funding streams to further militarize and over-police our borders. At some point, you have to ask yourself, the math is not mathing, and why? Why are we spending upwards of $4 billion or more, and yet we still have unaccompanied minors that aren't receiving legal services or health resources in the way that they need to? We do not want to further pressure border communities to participate in the criminalization of the most vulnerable people in our society, people seeking refuge from violence, terror, poverty. We do not want Texas leadership to be complicit in investment in policies that exacerbate humanitarian emergencies at our borders. How many times are we going to lean on the Red Cross? How many times are we not going to put resources where they need them into specialists, into healthcare professionals, into mental health care providers? I urge the legislature to create incentive structures that improve border Texans' access to healthcare resources, address fundamental problems with infrastructure throughout the border, including colonias, where frequent flooding creates dangers and increased health risks.
And thank you, and we're going to note you're against
Thank you.
HB 7. Thank you. Questions? Thank you. Ashley Vasquez. Ashley, we show you've registered for Arise and Self, and you're against HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Go right ahead.
I have small comments, right, on, I am against it in the case that it can open injustices within the immigrant community. And I thank you for allowing me to share this.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you. Esther Reyes. Esther Reyes. Esther Reyes. We show that Esther registered on behalf of Children's Defense Fund of Texas against HB 7, but did not testify. Rebecca Flores. Rebecca, we have you registered for yourself and against HB 7. Is that correct?
That's right.
and he'll pass that out. Go right ahead.
I summarized that into this. I live in San Antonio. I'm asking all of you to vote no against House Bill 7. You know that in 2021, you here gave Abbott billions of dollars, a blank check really for Operation Lone Star, which has resulted in deaths on both sides of the border among citizens and non-citizens, and the deaths continue. This bill will not end the migration of people who are looking to survive and will cross the border to work at poorly paid, piece rate, or minimum wage jobs in the ag-producing fields in Texas and in the South. In this session, again, billions more dollars are in the budget for this program. And to date, we, the taxpayers, and that's every one of us here, haven't received an official report about this program. In February 2022, I drove to Brackettville to bond out 8 young men with a total of $10,000 in bond money. As of this month, not one of these young men has been given a court date to appear to get their bail bond money returned. Kenney County has kept their money now for more than a year. These young men come from Chiapas, Mexico. When I bonded them out, they went back to their country, and they haven't heard anything else from the court system to get their $10,000 back. The systems created by Operation Lone Star are now being institutionalized by this bill. The treatment that these young men received at Briscoe and Segovia, the detention units where they were kept, were inhumane and extortionate. To punish them, the guards at these units denied the inmates food and did not allow them adequate time for exercise. One young man held at Briscoe was allowed to go outside 2 times in a 2-month period during his stay. He was always locked up in a cell.
Thank you, Rebecca. And we have your testimony.
Yes, you do.
We'll make sure, and we'll note you're against HB.
You're fine. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Donna Murphy. Donna, we have you with Woodry Juntos, Project Lifeline, and Self against HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, Chairman Hunter and members of the House State Affairs Committee. Good evening. My name is Donna Murphy. I'm here to testify against HB 7. HB 7 no longer, as I understand it, creates the separate court system for immigrants, but it attempts still to reduce the judicial burden, supposedly on our courts through other means. It also further professionalizes the unquestionably racialized detention and deportation of immigrants. I represent myself today as 1, a taxpayer interested in responsible public spending in Texas, 2, an active community advocate in race, immigration, poverty, and health, involved in national interdisciplinary efforts in reckoning and justice, 3, as a neurologist and neuroscientist professionally advancing the elimination of racialized health disparities, and 4, a board member of Woodry Juntos, a community-based organization supporting Asian and other immigrant communities in Houston. As a taxpayer, I am concerned that we are bloating already expensive systems of criminalizing and incarcerating people. Texas already spends billions on corrections that could help fund public schools or an ailing healthcare system instead. These policies would also disappear the immigrant workforce, denying them the opportunity to seek and find dignified work and contribute to a competitive Texas economy. As a physician advocate, having evaluated the quality of neurological care for people incarcerated in both criminal justice and immigration detention systems, I can attest that both generate more than financial costs, but also health and social costs for the people incarcerated. The systems supposedly caring for them end their families upon release. Poor health care while incarcerated has enduring consequences for individuals, their families, and public systems. Because those we incarcerate are disproportionately Black and brown, you can imagine who bears that burden the greatest. This racialized violence towards specific communities is not sustainable for democracy. Furthermore, the committing of young people to careers in a racist system of immigration enforcement will traumatize the perpetrators as much as their victims. This is how racism works in the brain. Just like HB 20, this is not a border bill, but it is legislation that will have harmful statewide impact on immigrants and non-immigrants alike.
Thank you.
Please
We
vote
got
no.
your sheet, but I need to, you're against HB 7.
Yes, correct.
Thank you very much. Any questions, members? Thank you very much. Roberto Lopez. Roberto, we show you've registered behalf of Texas Civil Rights Project and self against HB 7, correct?
Correct.
Go right ahead, sir.
Thank you. My name is Roberto Lopez. I am from the Rio Grande Valley, and I want to correct a few things. One, immigrants right now cannot present themselves at ports of entry and be processed for asylum. That has not been the case since the pandemic began, and that was not the case before it because of metering. Another correction that I think we need to make, and respectfully, Representative Guillen, what you're saying that you're not creating a separate and unequal system, you're saying we're not going to call it a border court. We're just going to highly incentivize that we prosecute all these immigrants in this particular area of the border region, and we're not going to do that anywhere else. That is calling it that's a separate border court system in everything but in name. Another part of HB 7 that I want to address is the provision on technology incubation and trying to do something about tourism and connecting border enforcement with tourism. Border enforcement historically has been very harmful for local commerce. There is no guarantee that border enforcement investment or companies into a border locality will help local commerce. Gentrification is a word that we all know well because of the dizzying impact industry, especially the tech industry, has had on rent prices and on local infrastructure. Brown and Black residents across Texas are being priced out of their communities. What we're saying, is let's bring in these border technologies and it's going to pump up the economy. We cannot have local economies based on violence, based on surveillance, based on a carceral system. We continue to ask ourselves, how can we most effectively harm immigrants? That's what we're saying again with technology. How can we most effectively harm immigrants so they don't come? They are going to come. You cannot stop that. Instead, we need to ask ourselves, how can we welcome people? How can we make it so that way they can actually, when they show up to the bridge, because they want to present themselves to authorities, that they can actually be processed, because that has not happened for at least the last 5 years.
And again, you're against HB 7.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Laurie Cook Heffron. Laurie Cook Heffron. Laurie Cook Heffron will show that she registered for herself against HB 7 but did not testify. Isabel Herrera. Isabel Herrera.
From the other room, lower floor room.
Go to the next one. Carisha Rogers. Carisha Rogers. Carisha Rogers.
Hello.
Are you Carisha Rogers?
Isabel.
No, we're not at you yet. So Carisha Rogers. We will show that Carisha Rogers registered for herself against HB 7. Isabel Herrera. Isabel, we show that you have registered for Texas Rising and Self against HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Thank you, representatives. Good evening. My name is Isabel Herrera. I'm here representing Texas Rising and myself as I voice my opposition to HB 7. I left El Paso 4 years ago to come to college in Austin, but you never truly leave your home. Growing up in El Paso meant knowing a community like no other and feeling safe anywhere in the city. Moving to Austin meant hearing nonstop hateful rhetoric coming from people with zero ties to the border. When we talk about the alleged border crisis, we are talking about a humanitarian crisis. We are not asking for a call to arms. HB 7 does just that and uselessly throws money at the wrong solutions. Rather than listening to what border communities really need, HB 7 militarizes a safe city. A city so safe that the most dangerous event to happen was orchestrated by a US citizen from Dallas. and gives priority to state leadership's racist agenda. The border is not a pawn that state representatives get to use to win points with their constituents. Very important. With this, I ask you to listen to border voices and pursue other solutions to the state's humanitarian crisis rather than investing in policies that make the situation a little bit worse. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much. John Kim. John, we have you registered for Wuri, Juntos, and Self against HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Go right ahead.
Okay. Dear Chairman and committee members, my name is John Kim, and I'm working at Wuri Juntos in Houston as the coordinator of the Senior Civic Engagement Team. Today, I am here to oppose the bill HB 7. If the HB 7 is passed through the legislature, it will be require another large budget. This budget will be used for the expansion and maintenance of new criminal courts and all jail facilities, compensation for personnel involved in related agencies, education, and other expenses, such as compensation for damages to private property that may occur during operations. As a result, Texas residents are likely to suffer from many drawbacks, such as increased taxes to cover the cost of these facilities and reduced mandatory services for the residents and the marginalized communities, which means other communities could be negatively impacted by the increased funding of criminal courts and the jail facilities, leading to more arrests and imprisonment and potentially separating our families. In my opinion, instead of such irrational and anti-freedom measures that cannot guarantee any results, it would be more productive and reasonable to utilize our hard-earned tax money to improve and expand policies that can actually improve the quality of life for Texas residents.
Thank you very much, John, and we'll note you're against HB 7.
That's correct.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Carisha Rogers. Carisha, we show that you've registered for yourself against HB 7. Is that correct?
Correct. Also, could you register me with Texas Rising as well?
Well,
Or is that possible?
we have you registered for self against HB 7.
Right.
So do you want to keep it like that?
Yeah, yes. it's
Yes.
like that. Mhm.
Okay, so go right ahead.
All right. Good evening, guys. I'm here to testify in opposition to HB 7 because we've already used billions of dollars for Operation Lone Star, and now we're asking more money to give the bordering counties to prosecute more immigrants who are just simply looking for a better life here in America. I will want to encourage this body to use those funds we have in working with the federal government to expand ports to entry and improving the backflow of the immigrants to the citizenship process. With these systems taking as long as they do, immigrants seek other means to cross the border. But even in those cases, we should be treating these people with dignity and respect because all of them just want to come here for a better life. And then we still keep having this misconception that these people are an invasion, but again, they're just humans who want to get away from the cartels. And just as much as we want to do actions against the cartels, they want to get away from them as well. When we prosecute them and when we send them back, we're just giving them back to the cartels and creating the problem even more. Sorry. And then at the same time, we have to turn a better eye towards the sense of immigration. We need to expand it so that we can make it, we need to actually offer better options than the cartels. I think I see a key issue of people pointing out here today is that cartels are the problem. The better way to really take down the cartels is to offer better options for immigrants so they don't have to even go anywhere near a cartel. So With that said, I really urge you to vote in opposition.
Richard, thank you so much. Any questions? Thank you very much. Karina Alvarez. Karina Alvarez. Karina Alvarez. Show Karina registered for Laredo Immigrant Alliance and Self against HB 7, did not testify. Libby Goldman. Libby, we show you've registered for Never Again Action and Self against HB 7. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Go right ahead.
Good evening. My name is Libby Goldman, and I live here in Austin. I also represent Never Again Action, a Jewish-led mobilization for immigration justice. I am here to urge you to vote no on HB 7. I had the opportunity last fall to participate in a delegation to bear witness to the unchecked human rights violations perpetrated by my government and law enforcement officers under Operation Lone Star. I spent 3 days touring OLS counties and got to watch magistration trials for 5 men who were detained under OLS, all of whom, as it turned out, were U.S. citizens. The due process violations I witnessed were rampant. I watched the judge video calling in from his home in Dallas to the bare bones trailer where the hearing was held, fail to read each man their rights. I also saw him neglect to share the probable cause for arrest for each man, leaving them confused about why they were arrested and sometimes what they were being charged with. I also watched the judge repeatedly dismiss the men's questions, including asking for a phone call or access to Wi-Fi to contact their family so they knew where they were. In other instances, migrants were forced to sign pre-filled documents only in English. This is not a functional justice system. HB 7 would further contribute to the due process violations already pervasive across OLS trials. Funding more courts does nothing to address the fundamental illegality and lack of morality that defines Operation Lone Star. The precedent that the current functioning of OLS has set is clear. Migrants are not treated as people worthy of human rights. Would you feel okay with a law that threw your son or your brother or you into prison for seeking a better life? Once again, I urge you to vote no on HB 7.
Thank you very much, Libby. Any questions? Thank you so much. Fabiola Barreto. Fabiola, we have you registered for Youth Rise Texas and Self against HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes, Chair.
Go right ahead.
Good evening, Chair Hunter, Vice Chair Hernandez, and committee members. My name is Fabiola Barreto. I am speaking for myself and Youth Rise Texas, and we are against the bill. Youth Rise Texas works to support young Texans rising from systems of oppression, which includes parental removal through incarceration or deportation. We represent hundreds of young Texans in the Central Texas area and teach youth about theory, praxis of community care as a part of community justice. Rather than codifying Operation Lone Star or OLS and diverting billions of dollars to programs which infringe on due process and separates families, we should put these resources to fund the needs of our communities to clean up water, provide money to education, and other basic needs. Many of young Texans we represent have had their families ripped apart because of deportation. Young people in Texas should worry about making good grades in school, not whether their parents will be home at the end of the day or whether they will need to become the heads of household at the age of 14. Unfortunately, that is the reality of a lot of young people, and this bill will only exacerbate the amount of young people with this worry. Members, we ask that you consider the immense waste of resources this program is, the adverse intended and unintended consequences that this will have for young people, and urge you to vote no on HB 7. Thank you.
Fabiola, thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much. Meira Vedros, Meira, and then Vedros. Meira Vedros will show she registered for herself against HB 7 but did not testify. You're going to have to help me on this one. Q-U-Y-N-H, Wong, Nguyen, Nguyen, with worry, juntos, and self. Is that correct?
Yes, I can always tell when I'm
And
up.
it's, you're against SB 7,
Yes, that's correct.
HB 7.
HB7, yes.
Even I'm having a hard time reading it. You threw me.
It's okay, it's Wednesday.
So let's make sure we're right. So how do you pronounce your first name?
My first name is Gwyn Hung.
Okay, Ms. Nguyen, you are with Worry, Juntos, and Self against HB 7.
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you very much. Go right ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Gwyn Hung Nguyen. I am the Senior Communications Associate for Worry Juntos. I am here to testify against HB 7. And as a child of Asian immigrants family and a resident of the border region, I am here before you to that I'm deeply troubled by the provisions in this bill. The system is an unjust system that does not consider the needs of those who are already marginalized due to their race, ethnicity, gender, and socioeconomic status. By allowing the mingling of private and public fund, HB 7 opens the door to corruption, discriminations against those who are already vulnerable in our society. As someone of Asian descent, I don't know if you can tell, I am tired of the harmful stereotypes perpetuated about immigrants and their impact on society. The fact that the myth that immigrants are stealing jobs or draining resources is just that, it's a myth. In fact, studies show that immigrants contribute more to our economy than they take. Sorry, it's very late, haven't dinner yet. So I pose the question to those who support this bill is why do we continue to perpetuate harmful myths about immigrants who contribute so much to our state and our country? I believe it's important to listen to the voices that you've heard all this evening, to those who are impacted by this bill, and I urge you to reconsider the perspective of those who may face language barriers or other barriers to advocacy. It is our duty to prioritize the voices of those who are mostly impacted by this bill, and also work to ensure a legal system that is fair, equitable for all. In conclusion, I ask you to think about the kind of messages that this bill sends to the rest of the world about the values we hold as Texans. Are we a state that values justice and fairness, or are we a state that seeks to harm those who are most vulnerable in our society? And I leave you with the words of Nelson Mandela Okay.
But you've given it to us in print, correct?
Correct.
So I'll let you quote it.
To deny people their human rights is to challenge their very humanity. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And we'll note you're against HB 7. Any questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Emma Espino. Emma Espino. Emma Espino. Will show that Emma registered on behalf of Southwestern Texas Synod ELCA Border Network for Human Rights and Self against HB 7, but did not testify. Emily A.B. French. Emily, we see that you have registered on behalf of Texas Civil Rights Project and Self against HB 7. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Go right ahead.
I'm here to speak in opposition to HB 7. I came prepared to testify against creating a separate court system. I'm glad it was taken out. I hope it was taken out for good. I do notice that there is still some funding for more court facilities in section 421.11 parentheses 2, and want to make sure to emphasize things that my colleagues have already said from the Texas Civil Rights Project. The Constitution, it specifically says persons, not citizens, in reference to due process rights. And I believe that a separate court system should stay out no matter how much funding there may be in the bill to create a new building for one. I also oppose the other grants in this bill for reasons that my colleagues have stated very well. We do not need more fences. We do not need more detention or processing facilities. This bill seems to create more money for things that we have seen be human rights violations in the past. And it is hard to find money in there for things that we have seen actually help human rights in the past. That is most of what I have to say, but I would just like to once again echo my brilliant colleagues to ask that money be directed not towards these things that violate human rights, but towards things that the residents near the border really need to improve their communities that they've told you about tonight.
Thank you so much, Emily. And again, you're against HB 7.
Correct.
Any questions? Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Terry Yun. Terry, we show you've registered on behalf of Wuri Juntos and self, and you're against HB 7, correct?
Yes, sir.
Go right ahead.
Yes. Dear Chairman and the members of the committee, my name is Terry Yoon, and I am the service coordinator with Wuri Juntos from Houston, and I am here to testify against HB 7. All my colleagues previously already mentioned in every way possible why we're against HB 7, so I will not repeat the same thing. I just want to say, rather than dedicating substantial funding streams to existing and new institutions that would further militarize and over-police the border, I hope to see that we will promote or provide more positive and wholesome solutions like funding to hire child welfare, medical and language professionals at the border, or fund community-based support services and proven humane alternatives to detention and addressing the root causes. The HB 7 exploits local economic vulnerability for the racist priorities of state leadership and would also allow counties in the border region to establish special border issues that will likely perpetuate human rights abuses with money from state and private donors. Therefore, I strongly urge you to vote no on HB 7. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Terry. Any questions? Thank you so much. Sulma Franco. Sulma Franco. Sulma Franco. Will show that Sulma registered for Mujeres Luchadoras and self against HB 7, but did not testify. Wesley Lawrence. Wesley, we show you've registered for yourself against HB 7. Is that correct?
That is correct, Mr.
Go
Chairman.
right ahead.
Hello, Mr. Chairman, members of this committee. My name is Wesley Lawrence. I come from El Paso, Texas, a community that knows all too well the effects of bad immigration laws. On August 3rd, 2019, El Paso faced a fatality caused by the same xenophobic, racist, and hateful rhetoric that bills like HB 7 continue to perpetrate into the hearts and minds of the average American. I want to set the record straight that border communities like El Paso are safe. You look at Laredo, who's the 7th safest city in the United States of America, El Paso being the 12th. This bill is a joke, and it makes these communities look like they're not safe. I also want to add that border communities like El Paso celebrate our culture, our history, our people, and when we work together with our colleagues in Mexico, we can actually fix things without creating over-government reach, such as this bill intends to do. What we need to remember is it's not the state's job to dictate immigration laws. That is a job of the federal government, and I challenge each and every one of you to work with Congress to fix our broken promises and our broken immigration laws here in this country. I'm sick and tired of politicians lying to DACA recipients and lying to immigrants, promising them a better life and doing jack shit for them.
Yeah, hold it. Look.
Sorry, sir.
No, listen, and I want everybody to know, we keep the civility down, like the pastor said earlier, or I'll have to clear the room.
Sorry, sir.
Please, let's keep on, whether we like or dislike the bills, let's both, I'm going to try to keep us all together. So continue.
Yeah, once again, sorry, sir. I just want to add that I believe that the Texas government can work with Congress to fix our broken immigration bills, and it starts with us doing that work here. And HB 7, like I said, it's a massive government overreach, and it takes away local jurisdiction and local powers. So thank you for that.
Thank you. Wesley, Richard, Representative Raymond has a question.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I want to give, I'm interested, I'd like to hear, what do you think could be done? What could the federal government do to fix? I'd like to hear from your end of it. What do you think? How do we fix what's going on?
Well, we start by keeping our promises. I'm going to tell you that money is not the solution to our broken immigration problem.
Keeping our promises, what does that mean?
Well, we keep telling people, the federal government, that we are here for everyone and that we are a country that if they come here, they will have better life and better opportunity.
Well, hold on. Do you know, this gets thrown around, so I want to ask, I'd be interested in getting your response. Do you believe in open borders?
There are no open borders.
Do you believe in open borders?
There are no open borders.
Do you believe anybody that wants to come should be able to come?
Yes, I do believe that because we are a land of opportunity. And let me state for the record, sir, the issue that we have here is through government intervention from the U.S. government going into different countries and destabilizing them for oil and for other profits. It causes that. People are fleeing. And I would tell you, and I welcome you to come to El Paso to speak to the migrants that are in El Paso and to learn from them. These are not violent criminals. These are people like you and I. We are migrants. We are not, unless you're Native American, you're not alone.
So hold on a second. To the chairman's point, let's just try to be calm. I wanted to know what your idea was about what could Congress do or what could this country do to solve, or maybe you think there's not a problem. I guess you think there is. I'm not clear. There's a problem, there's not a problem?
Oh, the problem is we're not keeping our promises. We keep telling DACA recipients that we're going to give them a pathway to citizenship. Republicans have said that, Democrats have said that, and we're not delivering.
Hold on, so DACA, they're here already. So we're talking about, as Chairman Anchia said a while ago, 1.7 million under Reagan, 1.6 million under Bush, I don't even know how many under Obama, et cetera. So you're okay with all that amount of illegal immigration? Because that would be keeping the promise that anybody could come?
Well, migration is a human right, so the term illegal alien is not appropriate.
Okay, well, then I thank you for testifying. I appreciate you being here.
And thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Thank you. Marlo Holguin. Marlo, we show that you've registered for yourself against HB 7. Is that correct?
That's correct, Chairman.
Go right ahead.
Right, this is thrilling. This is exciting to be here. Good evening. I think in bullet points, so bear with me. I'm against this policy, but I like it because it's an example. It's a testament of historically inefficient solutions where we promote mass incarceration and mass criminalization because we fail to address the root problem, the cause of why people migrate here. We're addressing the consequence. We're addressing smugglers. We're addressing immigration, but not what causes immigration or what promotes the cartels. And the problem is the war on drugs. The war on drugs gave way for the cartels to have an illicit market to become violently prosperous. Now, there are two groups that benefit from the war on drugs handsomely in these kinds of policy. The cartels and the private industrial conflicts, which includes lobbyists and law enforcement. Like Forex bros would say, the bigger the risk, the bigger the reward. Drugs have won the war on drugs. Drugs will continue to come, and there is a lot to say about how our war on drug policies have destabilized other countries south of the border, which has caused influxes of migration for decades. Now, there is also a lot to say about the most gun-loving state being at the border of a country plagued by American-trafficked guns at the hands of cartels. I encourage y'all to take a deeper analytical approach to addressing the cartel problem and draft sensible drug policy that will eliminate the illicit market that cartels have, again, violently prospered under.
Thank you very much, and we'll note you're against HB 7, correct?
That's correct.
Thanks so much. Representative Raymond?
Chairman, I don't have a question, but could I say something, Chairman? I hope this, no, I don't have a question for you. If I could just make an observation. A lot of people have testified. I think we've sort of heard why you're against the bill. We can't tell you what to say when you get up here, but I would really, me personally, I would love some of the witnesses that are still to be heard from when they get up here to use their 2 minutes to talk about how you would solve the problem. What would you do? Not just get up here and say this is a bad bill and you don't want it to spend. What would you do? I mean, and again, that witness, Wesley, if you think that anybody should come if they want to, well, okay. I don't agree with that, and I think most Americans and most people don't agree with you. Probably most of us, maybe all of us up here don't agree with you. That's called open borders. That's what it is. Well, that's what it is. If anybody who wants to come can come, that's called open borders. I would just want to encourage, Chairman, that witnesses who come, try to give us a solution. Give us ideas what you would do. Because I certainly have gotten the message about those of you who are against this legislation and why. Talk to us about what you would do. That would be very helpful, but we can't tell you what to say. Thank you, Chairman, for letting me say that.
Yvonne Delling? Yvonne, we have you registered for yourself against HB 7. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Go right ahead.
That's too loud. I was beginning to think that I hadn't registered correctly. Thank you for that question. I mean, I've been sitting here thinking, do I really want to speak or not? I come to you from San Antonio to say that I know why folks are coming, and they are desperate. I spent most of my adult life as a lay missioner with the church in Central America, most of my adult life. I returned to the U.S. in 2006, and since that time, I've worked with immigrants, largely because out of the relationships with all those from a lifetime in Central America, I'm finding myself on the phone call end of folks who are saying, my youngest is in a detention center somewhere, can you help me find him? I have spent time in Dilley Detention Center and in Carnes Detention Center right there near San Antonio, a lot of time, and I've listened to the stories. I have also spent time in the shelters, helping in the shelters run by the Catholic Church in Juarez, and down in Laredo and the other border areas. I mean, part of the reason that I help immigrants is because I saw what the U.S. government did during 3 decades in Central America. My feeling about the legislation before us on this one, HB 7, my feeling about it is it gets sucked into the war against the poor, and it encourages structures that are sinful. And they're going to invite all of the people who live in the borderlands to begin working in exploitative industries, which are the courts, which aren't going to resolve anything. Maybe get some money to ranchers to fix their fences, but then what? Because these courts can't
Thank you very much.
They can't deport them, so then what?
We got you. So
I just
you're
wanna-
against,
can I-
no, ma'am, we're at the 2 minutes. So we're going to register you against HB 7.
Against. And in favor of a national solution.
All right. Thank you very much. Stacy, MERKT? Stacy, we have you registered on behalf of yourself against HB 7. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. I appreciate your question, too. You asked, what can we do? And I'm not sure I have a lot of answers, but I do know that some of what Yvonne was saying in regards to the extractive way we've lived our lives has caused for the unequal balance between our countries, between this country and all the other countries. And I think we do need to look deep and hard at the roots that we've created that caused people to leave and that aren't going to stop because of any kind of militarism we do. It's just not the answer. I didn't prepare remarks in regards to HB 6, but 7, but I did to 20.
We're on HB 7, right?
Yeah, right.
Against HB 7.
We are. I didn't prepare remarks for that, but I'm just saying that this is kind of off the cuff, and I look forward to coming back for the next version, which is HB 20. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you. Alex Obregon. Alex, we have you representing yourself against HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes.
Go right ahead.
I'm a born and raised Texan and a resident of San Antonio, and I'm here to ask that this committee oppose HB 7. It is my understanding this bill is modeled off the multi-billion-dollar failure that is Operation Lone Star. And I would ask that y'all be better stewards of Texan taxpayer dollars instead of continuing to fund a program that is not doing what it stated to do and in fact makes our communities less safe. And I will yield my time.
Thank you so much. Appreciate you. Any questions? Thank you. Sergio Trevino. Sergio, I have you registered for La Union del Pueblo Entero against HB 7. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Go right ahead.
So my name is Sergio Trevino. I'm a border resident for over 30 years. I'm a student at UTRGV. I'm a community member that works with La Unión del Pueblo Entero. It's a community union that comes together. And I'm glad that Mr. Gillian came back and everybody's here. Right now, they're passing around a graph that kind of shows how our policies, the ending of the Bracero program, the ending of temporary work permits created an illegal entries to spike up. And when you're asking for a solution, I mean, you guys probably don't have the power because it's more of a federal issue, but it's about welcoming people and giving them legal access to come into this country. Mr. Gillian started this presentation by saying that HB 7 is about the economy. And it is because it funds the system that's built on exploiting and creating criminals instead of inviting workers and creating a system where we can all prosper. There's a lot of people in Starr County that survive off the militarization of the border, but Starr County also voted against the border crisis, just like Cameron County and just like Hidalgo County. So they don't agree with Operation Lone Star. I would say something you can do is you can fund colonias, you can fund infrastructure, you can fund healthcare. We go to county commissioners meetings and we ask for help with streetlights, we ask for help with drainage, and what do they say? We don't have money. Why? Because there isn't any programs that are being funded by y'all here that actually help the poor and working class. Instead, you'd rather spend money to, I mean, not you, but the systems that are in place. I'm sure y'all are really good people because y'all don't get paid enough to wait here for this amount of time, just like we don't get paid enough. So I know y'all really care about people and there's solutions out there. I would suggest you look into that study. And
Sergio, thank you very much. And again, I want to make sure we're clear, against HB 7.
HB 7.
Then Representative Raymond has a question.
Yes, I do for Sergio here.
Yeah.
So you started alluding to it, and I said it earlier in the evening. So you think that I don't want to put words in your mouth, but what I heard you say is you referenced the Bracero program. So let's talk about today.
Yes.
Expanding the worker visa program?
Expanding
significantly?
expanding it, I would say, yes, open it up to everybody. Everybody
Well,
comes
not
to the
everybody,
border,
but whoever-
signs their information.
You do visa workers if you need, if we have jobs that Americans aren't taking,
Yes,
right?
yes.
So it's not everybody. It will be a lot. Obviously, it'd be a lot.
I'm working on a study to show that people are forced to immigrate. They're migrants that are forced to live here because of the policies that exist. If they could, they would work here and go back. I know people that are working on the border right now so they can have enough money, so they can move back and pay what they
Right,
need
but
to pay.
but would you agree that, we've had different witnesses, but an
Yeah.
overwhelming number of the people that come here come and get hired and work in jobs that they get here in the United States, right?
So if you read that study,
I
it's
looked
the
at it.
origins of the new Latino underclass. That's just a graph. If you actually read the whole study, it shows how undocumented workers are forced to work for lower wages than any other kinds of work.
Which is why, and I told somebody in the back room, I said, you know, the part of the problem we've had through the years, the labor unions didn't want to expand the visa program, right?
I can't.
You heard testimony about Cesar Chavez, for example?
Yeah.
So, okay, so labor, but now, I think from what, at least what I see, and a lot of the jobs that are being filled by immigrants are not jobs that labor union members want, okay?
I mean, there was
So-
13-year-olds working in the meat factory.
So you think Republicans would pass something in the Congress that says, hey, let's expand the worker program, not change the citizenship part, just the worker part?
Yeah.
But then I wondered if maybe there are some big companies out there that don't want you to expand the visa program because they don't want to pay a little bit higher wage.
And that's the way it is. Right now, there's an underclass of undocumented workers that don't have protections, and they're being exploited by a system that.
So just for the record then, you feel like if we expanded the visa worker,
In the right way, right? With oversight, with follow-through, with actually investing money into that. But honestly, it's just about.
dude, if people could come here legally and work here legally,
Yeah.
they'll do that in a heartbeat instead of going through, you know, the river or with coyotes or whatever.
Yeah, we're funding the cartel, but with these policies.
So that's where we need to go.
I agree.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Thank you. Johnny, is it Ruffier? Johnny, we show you are registered for yourself and against HB 7. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Go right ahead.
All righty. Thank you so much, y'all. My name is Johnny Ruffier. I'm a student at the University of Texas at Austin, and I'm from El Paso, Texas, which I'm proud to say continues to rank among the safest cities in the country. And I strongly believe that that is not despite, but because of the fact that we are close to the border. A quarter of the people that live in our city come from another country. And I think that's very significant. And I want to talk and spend my time kind of rebuking a few of the notions that were mentioned earlier, namely that people who oppose this legislation aren't looking for real solutions. I'm not a policy expert, and I'm not going to pretend to be, but a lot of folks who are have come up here, and they've spoken on this line and have said that the best thing that this legislative body can do to fight this crisis is to fund community centers who are already doing the work of processing in a way that is humane. Moving on, and if that's not enough, I think that there's just kind of this misdiagnosis of what the issue is, saying that folks that are coming here, you know, in large number is an inherent problem. But that doesn't really add up, given the fact that migrants, both documented and undocumented, commit crimes at rates that are significantly lower than average US-born citizens, along with the fact that there is a labor shortage, not an influx of people who are looking to get into the workforce. There is no real inherent harm of allowing these folks to come in. Our communities are not going to get more dangerous. Folks aren't going to be run out of jobs. There is no inherent harm. The inherent harm is in creating a system that criminalizes people because of the nations that they were born in. So for those reasons, I ask that you oppose this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Johnny. Appreciate any questions. Thank you. May Hardebeck. May we have you registered for yourself against HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes.
Go right ahead.
Well, first I wanted to see if committee person Gillen will be present during the entirety of the HB 20 testimony, as he is one of the authors. I did notice that he was 20 minutes away from the desk. We all take breaks, but this is your bill.
First of all, you address the committee. You don't ask questions. Two, this is the second time I've asked the crowd, no outbursts. And so that's number two. So just address the committee. Don't make it personal on a member. Go right ahead. All right. Thank you very much. David Johnson. David Johnson. David Johnson. We'll note that David registered with Grassroots Leadership and Self against HB 7 and did not testify. Noam Zahavi. Noam, we have you registered for yourself against HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes, and
Go
I'm
right ahead.
also here on behalf of Never Again Action.
All right, hold on.
Okay.
That's not how you registered.
Sorry.
So you registered for yourself against HB 7.
Correct.
Okay, and that's how we can rely on your registration, correct?
You can.
And you're against HB 7.
That is correct.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. I am a proud child of immigrants, the great-grandchild of Holocaust survivors, and a product of the American dream that we have heard a lot about tonight. I live in Austin, Texas, and I'm here to testify against HB 7. This bill opposes everything I learned about the United States and its values, growing up as a student in the American public education system. Even despite the amendments made, HB 7 aims to uphold and grow the separate court system that already exists for those arrested under Governor Abbott's Operation Lone Star. This is a complete violation of our judicial system. As a nation, we have already decided that separate is inherently unequal. Please do not continue to uphold a system that does not treat individuals as equals. And in response to your question, many folks have come up here tonight and testified this evening to urge you all to spend those billions of dollars set aside for Operation Lone Star on other things, such as supporting migrants who arrive at the border, providing accessible health care, focusing on solving the impact and the root causes of natural disasters that impact those on the border, and to provide other career opportunities for the border communities, just to name a few. I am adamantly against continuing to fund a system that is not working because we don't have the best solution right now. Passing this bill will do just that. I urge you to deeply reflect on the many testimonies from your constituents heard here tonight who have had firsthand experiences with the violent systems at the border. I urge you to vote no on HB 7.
Thank you. Any questions? Thank you very much. Liz Barraza. Liz, we have you registered for yourself against HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes, that's
Go
correct.
right ahead.
Thank you. I am against HB 7. Changing the tacky language of the original bill doesn't change the tackiness of the bill. Calling it a court program and saying it's not a separation of courts when it still does that feels like putting lipstick on a pig. I echo an earlier testimony that HB 7 looks to institutionalize OLS. This bill, like other bills, are anti-immigrant, but actually, let's not turn a blind eye to the fact that it's also anti-US citizen. US citizen that looks like me, though, who may carry my mother, who's undocumented. She's dead, by the way, but she was undocumented. And in this circumstance, I would be a smuggler and I'd be tried by said court. Let's put all this brain energy and taxpayer money to creating meaningful grants that solve real problems, like carving pathways in education that don't just capitalize on people's need to earn a living wage in order to perpetuate a hate-based agenda, like the patrol pathway described in this bill. Also, I'd appreciate close attention to subchapter H that states that court program can accept and solicit private monies because, as we know, and you all know, private monies means private interests. It's not personal, Mr. Guillen. I just encourage this committee, including the author, to vote against the bill. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Any questions? Thank you. Zachary Kolodny. Zachary Kolodny. Zachary Kolodny. We'll note Zachary registered for himself against HB 7 and did not testify. Deborah Ponce. Deborah, we have you registered for yourself against HB 7. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Go right ahead.
Good evening. My name is Deborah Ponce, and I would like to speak against HB 7. What concerns me when I read this bill, and it's printed right here, is the fundraising element that was put in here and the words that were used in the portion that is subchapter H. The reason is because the portions read like a nonprofit reliant on fundraising, and the fundraising concerns me because it creates influence, a form of influence, and reliance on big money donors. It also opens the door to corruption. If you look at that portion, it says that it allows the courts to solicit and accept gifts. There's no monetary limit there. Grants and donations from any other source, public or private, as necessary to ensure effective implementation and operation of a border court protection program. So as some of the speakers before me have said, you know, do we want this court to be most important? If it is bringing in these big grants, gifts, public and private donations, what do you think will be the most important protection program, the most important protection in that courtroom? They're going to be spending most of the time on making sure that they get this money. And these counties that don't have very much, they're small, are going to be implementing this over and over again. And it's concerning to me, and I think that you should vote no on it because it's not clear.
Thank you, and we'll note you're against HB 7.
Thank
Any
you.
questions? Thank you. Eileen Garza. Eileen Garza. Eileen Garza. Will show she registered for herself against HB 7, but did not testify. Julio Vasquez. Julio Vasquez. Julio Vasquez. We'll note that Julio Vasquez registered for Southwestern Texas Synod Border Network for Human Rights and Self against HB 7, but did not testify. David Stout. David, we have you registered as El Paso County and Self against HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes, Mr. Chair, that is correct.
Go right ahead.
Again, David Stout, I'm an El Paso County Commissioner. I'm here on behalf of El Paso County to oppose HB 7. Representative Raymond, I've got a number of things that we can talk about, and it's probably going to be too difficult to talk about them all in 2 minutes. But here's a list, okay? First of all, Texas can stop meddling in federal issues. Immigration is a federal issue. You can stop wasting state funds on policies that haven't been proven to work. You can join me and go advocate in Washington, D.C., in Congress, for immigration reform, whether it's piecemeal or whether it's comprehensive. We can go advocate together to get it done. We can advocate for bills like the farm worker bill, or the healthcare worker bill, or regularizing Dreamers status. You can help me to elect congresspeople who are pro-immigrant, who aren't racist or xenophobic, and who want our border and who don't want our border sealed so that no more brown people can come into this country. You can help provide support and resources to sending countries. You can recognize that the reasons why countries actually send people and why people are forced to migrate here, and we can help them fix their social fabric. You can help demilitarize our border. You can stop forcing local taxpayers to cover the costs of terrible policies such as this one. You can read the Bible and act accordingly. You can push to create an orderly process that is humane and doesn't force immigrants to risk their lives to come to our country. You can ask the Biden administration to stop denying asylum to those who seek it.
Thank you.
It's a legal form of migration.
Thank you, David.
Go on and on and on for many hours.
Representative Raymond.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Commissioner. And so, you know, this is a national problem, right? And so when I said that a while ago, I encouraged you and anybody else to come and say, what would you do? What would you do if you were president, if you were in Congress, whatever? And I have for years talked to members of Congress, Democrats and Republicans, right? And whether I'm right or wrong, I have focused a lot on letting people come work legally. Because I believe that, I believe if you read about this and you look at it, that is a really big part of the problem. People don't come over here to the United States just because they want to live on the streets, okay?
Right.
They come because they get jobs and they make a lot more money in some jobs that so many Americans don't want than they could ever make back home. And that's why they come. So I have tried to do that.
Thank you.
But you know, I respectfully, I don't agree with some of the things you just said. You know, some of you make it sound like, hey, whoever wants to come, let them come. And that's, if that were true, if this is about humanitarian, period, end of story, I got news for you. There are other parts of the world where people are a lot worse off than in Central America, okay? North Korea, the Middle East, India. I could find you a lot of countries where people are a lot, as bad as you think, whatever, El Salvador, Honduras, take your pick. Other parts of the world where it's a lot worse. So if that's gonna be the measure, then let's let those people come first because they're in a worse situation than people in Central America. But that's not what you're advocating. It's not what anybody seems to be advocating. But if that's gonna be the measure, then let's be fair about it. Let's let the people that are living on 10 cents a day or less a week, let them come first. But that's not the answer. So with all respect, you know, I want us to have a real solution. And I do think that it has to be DC, but if DC doesn't do more, the Democrats and Republicans can't come together and do more up there, then you're gonna have stuff like this. I got news for you. You're gonna have stuff like this come. And whether or not some of us up here oppose it, support it, somewhere in between, it's going to happen. So, Commissioner, yes, help us figure it out. But respectfully, no, I don't think, as a very strong Democrat, don't believe it's, hey, whoever wants to come, dale gas, come on. That's not going to work, and that's not a good policy. And I don't believe.
Yeah, yo no dije eso tampoco.
Oh, but you kind of did. You kind of did. But if that's what you meant, thank you for clarifying that you don't believe that we should let just anybody who wants to come.
I think there needs to be an orderly process and a humane process.
Again, humane. If you want to talk about humane, there are other parts of the world they need more help than Central America. So why don't we start there? You can answer that, and then that's the question. Why don't we start there, and then I won't ask anything else. Should we let people from North Korea, from Iraq, from Iran?
First of all, I don't think everybody does want to come. I think people would love to stay in their countries.
You give them a chance, trust me, they'll come.
I think people would love to stay in their countries if they had the opportunities that they have here.
Anyway, sorry.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here.
All right, thank you all very much. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dale Story. Dale Story. Dale Story will show Dale registered for himself against HB 7 and did not testify. Taylor Trevino. Taylor Trevino. Taylor, we have you registered for yourself against HB 7. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
Go right ahead.
All right, good evening. My name is Taylor Trevino, and I'm here testifying against HB 7. So I'm still going to give my prepared testimony, but in terms of what I would do to respond to your question, listen to what those who live in border communities are asking for. Often that is investment in communities and humanitarian efforts to support a dignified reception and experience for migrants at our southern border, using funds to support NGOs and local nonprofits that are already doing the work and not in militarization of the border. So in terms of the bill, I apologize for any redundancy for things we may have heard earlier, but I appreciate the opportunity to share my thoughts on the proposed legislation. So on the topic of a border wall, it's clear that this would be a waste of money and that it would not be effective. Building a wall is not going to stop migration, it's not going to address the root causes of the issues people are fleeing from, and it's not going to improve the humanitarian crisis that border communities are facing. Most of the people who are in the U.S. without authorization are due to overstayed visas, so they're arriving here on a plane or through legal ports of entry in the first place. Additionally, as you're aware, a lot of the land along the border is private property and is not owned by the state. My father and his siblings have land in Brownsville that has been in our family for generations. Do you expect families like mine, ranchers and business owners, to simply give up their land and possibly their livelihood to comply with the state's partisan and xenophobic plans? And while there are myriad human-related reasons we shouldn't build a wall, the ecological impacts would be huge and must be considered. The ecosystem around the Rio Grande is vast, and thousands of species of animals rely on the water supply and on the ability to go back and forth. I urge you to look at the environmental research that has been conducted on the detrimental impacts that such a barrier would have and take that into account when considering this bill. Additionally, I don't know if supporters of this bill have looked at the geography of Texas's southern border, but it is rugged and mountainous. At other points, a deathly hot, dry desert filled with thorny mesquite and cactus. Not only are these areas rarely traversed by migrants, but constructing a wall in this topography would be extremely difficult, nonsensical, and dangerous to the lives of those building it. Thank you.
All right, we'll note you're against HB 7. Rochelle Shannon. Rochelle, we show you've registered for yourself against HB 7.
That's correct, and
Is
it's
that
Rachel
correct?
Shannon.
Is that correct?
Yes, it's Rachel.
Go right ahead, Rachel.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is Rachel Shannon. I live in Austin, Texas, and I'm here speaking against HB 7. I visited multiple locations along the border this fall as part of a delegation to witness the impact of Operation Lone Star. What I saw was a horrifying exploitation of human rights disguised as the justice system. From a small hallway in the Valverde Sheriff's Department in a tiny rectangle on a tiny screen mounted in the upper corner, I watched a young man from Austin endure a magistration with no representation. As he sat 50 yards away in an inaccessible white tent being questioned by a judge in Austin from a monitor, it was completely unclear if the gentleman was aware of the purpose of the magistration or what the judge was needing from him. This man held a job in Austin where he lived with his mom and was being detained and held with exorbitant bail for driving with 4 friends in his car on charges of smuggling humans. As many people traveling with what loved ones are turned into smugglers under OLS. None of what I saw over those several days, the exploitative bails, the lack of representation, the exaggerated charges, the targeting over policing of communities of color, none of that makes us safer. These separate and unequal courts and policies do not make me or anyone else in this country safer. They do serve to erode justice in the name of fear, anti-immigration sentiment, and racism. Please discontinue this ineffective misuse of our collective resources and fund much-needed generative support for our border communities, as well as funding humane paths for migration into this country. Thank you.
Rachel, thank you so much. Any questions? Thank you. Grace, is it Pankl? P-A-N-K-L. Grace? Grace, we show you have registered for yourself against HB 7. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Go right ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you for taking the time to listen to us tonight. I'm definitely against this bill because I really care about the families and the kids who will be impacted by this. I think we forget sometimes that those are the ones that actually will be hurt. My dad moved here to Texas about 20 years ago, and he was at one of the lowest points of his life. He didn't have money, he didn't have a job, he didn't have anything, but he just needed to escape where he was at. And it's just so upsetting to me that if he came here and he could have been met with these courts that maybe they would have torn me away from him. Maybe they would have separated me and my sister. Maybe we would have ended up in foster care. And I just don't understand what's the difference between us coming from a different state when he needed somewhere to welcome him, and what's the difference between somebody coming from a different country? I know you can think of a lot of individual specific differences like in, I don't know, like municipal weight, or I'm not very good with words, but I guess in the heart is the same, right? Someone comes to your door in need, you help them, right? I think we can all agree on that. Somebody comes to your door in need, you don't make them wait or go through some separate and unequal court process. You welcome them in and you figure out the rest later. And I just really ask you to think about why this is what the solution is. I agree, I understand we need to find solutions, right? But I think, you've heard that people say those solutions don't lie with me or might not lie with you or some of y'all in this room, but it could lie with those people that are actually in the communities who are affected. And so maybe we could get those folks together and kind of create a discussion to figure out what that solution could be. But I really urge you to understand that this is not the solution. And I hope you listen to us, that this many people staying here this late shows you that this is not the right choice. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Grace. Thank you. Question. Roberto Mejia. Roberto, we show that you've registered for yourself against HB 7. Is that correct? No. They didn't make it.
Only speak Spanish, sorry.
Mr. Chairman, I'm happy to translate if that's helpful.
You can't.
Okay.
We have to do a form.
She can do it for me. Can I interpret?
Well, let's do this. Let's do this. Because they.
Estamos intentando averiguar la interpretación.
They're going to help you come right over here. Alicia Torres.
That's me.
Well, Alicia, you go there and.
No, she needs to fill out the form, so
Well, she's testifying. She can't. Okay, give me the next one. Bethany Carson. Now, Bethany, we show you're here on behalf of Grassroots Leadership and Self against HB 7. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Go right ahead.
Good evening. I'm here today to just reinforce that a separate court system can never be equal. This bill would fund and codify the separate and unequal border court system that has been operating for the last 2 years under Operation Lone Star, including through private funding, which is alarming as it will be ideologically motivated and compromises the integrity of the court. I've seen the current process firsthand through several delegations to the border to witness Operation Lone Star arrests and magistration. From a tiny screen at the Valverde Processing Center, broadcasting hearings where migrants also watch the judge from a tiny screen in portable trailers. I've watched migrants in wet, muddy clothes, confused about who has even detained them, undergo magistration without an attorney. Through the same process, I saw a young U.S. citizen sob uncontrollably when he heard he had a bond of multiple hundreds of thousands of dollars for smuggling. He told the judge he was the sole caretaker of his disabled parents and he had to get back to them. He had no attorney and would not likely see one for months. The inferior justice system continues when these men are sent to be warehoused in repurposed TDCJ prisons rather than a county jail as required for pretrial detention. We visited dozens of men in one of these prisons, the Segovia unit, and heard of enormous pretrial wait times, access to attorney issues, as well as grave conditions violations such as literal starvation and emotional and physical abuse. This segregated court and detention process does not uphold basic due process rights. We should not reinforce a court process with this track record. You heard from border residents that what they need is funding for basic health needs and infrastructure like drainage, not more militarization and enforcement. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Bethany. Any questions? Thank you so much. Sadie Hernandez. Sadie Hernandez. Sadie Hernandez. Will show that Sadie registered for Transgender Education Network of Texas and Self against HB 7, but did not testify. But aren't they separate? Okay, let's call the interpreter first. Yeah, by herself. Alicia Torres. Now, Alicia, we have you with Grassroots Leadership and Self registered against HB 7.
That's correct, sir.
Go right ahead.
It's been a long day. Hello, my name is Alicia Torres. I'm here to ask for a no vote on HB 7. HB 7 does nothing more than, it's nothing more than an infrastructure extension bill for Operation Lone Star, a law enforcement program with a current cost of $4 billion and a pending $5 billion request in our current budget. I believe that to be fiscally responsible, you have to see what you are funding. I ask, have you yourselves gone and experienced the current OLS current system that you are being asked to fund and expand? I have. During a magistration, I observed a father being charged with a felony for smuggling. He was simply traveling with his child. I have experienced the belittling of the men being charged on part of the judges. I ask that before you vote, go and actually see for yourselves what you would be funding, the injustice and constant violations of due process that you would be funding if you choose to vote in support of this bill. Currently, we are spending $500,000 on the targeting and prosecution of migrant men under Operation Lone Star, and in comparison, $6,000 per student in our Texas schools. How do we justify that? How would you justify that? If passed, HB 7 would do nothing more than to keep building out the carceral infrastructure that has since its inception been weaponized against the most vulnerable, against the Black and brown body, against people that look and sound like me, brown people with an accent, whether you know if I am here legally or illegally. Please do not play into the hate political agenda that is currently being pushed on us. Be better, do better, vote no on HB 7, fund communities, fund actually community-centered needs, not the carceral system. Thank you.
Thank you, Alicia. Thank you very much. So this is our one. Okay, Roberto Mejia. Now, Alicia, you're going to be the interpreter, correct?
Correct.
Okay, now remember the rule we've said is I'm adding a minute. So it's not 2 minutes, it's 3, but that includes the interpretation. So yeah, make sure Roberto understands 2 minutes and a minute, or you can divide it up. It doesn't matter on the
May I
interpretation.
have a time to, I explained it to him, but may I have a time to reinforce, just to
See,
remind him?
yes.
So nomás para recordar que la regla es, en total tenemos 3 minutos, usted y yo, así que es su testimonio y dentro de esos 3 minutos tengo yo que interpretar su testimonio.
Perfecto.
Así que corto y despacio para poder ser efectiva en la traducción.
Muy bien.
Okay, Roberto, we have you registered for yourself against HB 7.
Roberto, lo tenemos a usted registrado como individual en contra de la propuesta HB7.
Correct?
Correct.
Sí. Go right ahead.
Listo. Es un honor estar frente a ustedes, comité. Humildemente vengo a dar mi testimonio.
It's an honor to be before it's an honor to be before you all committee. I humbly come to give my testimony.
Soy uno de los sobrevivientes de la operación Lone Star.
I'm one of the survivors of Operation Lone Star.
Fui capturado el 18 de octubre del 2021.
I was captured
18 de octubre del 2021.
October 18, 2001.
Estoy al 12 de abril 2023 y aún mi caso sigue en apertura, no está cerrado.
We are now currently in today's date, April 12. Thank you. So long. April 12. And currently my case is still open.
Creo que vine a buscar seguridad a ese país y encontré una tortura en las prisiones de Briscoe y Segovia.
I came looking for safety in this country, and I found torture in the prisons of Segovia and Briscoe.
Quiero alzar mi voz en nombre de los 12,000 hombres que hemos sido criminalizados injustamente.
I want to raise my voice in honor of the 12,000 men that have been prosecuted unjustly.
Creo que somos personas de bien que venimos a buscar seguridad y se nos encuentra con una forma de tortura de un siglo XXI en unas tierras americanas.
I believe that we are men of good believe that we are men of good looking for safety, yet we are encountered with a torture system in the 21st century in American lands.
Se nos despoja de nuestra dignidad como personas y nos trata menos que humanos solo por ser hispanos.
Our dignity is stripped as human beings, and we are treated less just because we are Hispanics.
Tengo una posible solución humildemente a este problema.
I have a possible solution to this problem, if I may humbly suggest it.
Si gustan preguntar después del tiempo, con gusto contestaré.
If you would like to inquire about it after our time, I would happily answer.
Bien, no tengo tiempo, entonces lo haré ahora.
Good. Given that I won't have time, I have a little bit of time, I'll do it now.
Muchos de los migrantes venimos de Centroamérica y México y no tenemos la oportunidad de ser escuchados en la frontera.
A lot of migrants coming from Mexico and Central America, we come and we are not given the opportunity or the chance to be heard at the border.
Si crearan canales para poder identificar las personas que venimos a solicitar ayuda,
If there were channels that were created to help identify the people that are coming to seek for help,
identificarían quienes realmente tenemos necesidad de ayuda y no somos delincuentes.
you would be clearly able to identify those that are coming here seeking help and those that are criminal.
Y las personas que ingresaríamos a Estados Unidos ingresaríamos a través de un permiso de trabajo y pagaríamos nuestras taxas como corresponde a la ley.
And those of us that would be able to come in legally, we would be able to acquire a job and pay taxes.
Venimos a aportar nuestros mejores años de vida en trabajo.
We come here to give the best years of our lives in the means of work.
No venimos a hacer daño en ningún momento.
We don't come to provide harm in any way.
Para finalizar, Dios bendiga a América.
To finish off, God bless America.
And you're against HB 7.
¿Y usted está en contra del HB 7?
Claro que sí.
Of course I am.
Thank you very much, Roberto. Appreciate it. Thank you. That's it. All right, now, members, that's all the registrations we have on this bill. And you need to listen carefully, audience. Is there anyone else who wishes to speak on for or against the bill that registered by the deadline? So if you think you registered by the deadline, come up here.
Can I ask a question?
You're going to talk to her.
What do I do now?
Busy. And are you working on them?
She's gonna
All right. Audrey Pettis, and we have you on behalf of the Texas Freedom Network and Self against HB 7. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Go right ahead.
Admittedly, I hadn't really done a deep dive. Well, hi, everybody. My name is Audrey Pettis. My pronouns are they, them. I'm a first-generation immigrant here in Texas. My family immigrated to El Paso in 1993, shortly after I was born. And I grew up in El Paso and lived there for 28 years before moving here so that I could come and testify before the legislature when things like this happened. And I moved here on August 3rd of 2021, the anniversary of the El Paso shooting. That happened because of anti-immigrant rhetoric. So I request humbly that when you talk about immigrants, you do so respectfully. My dad was in the Walmart when that shooting happened, and the words that you use matter. So please do so with respect. So admittedly, I hadn't really done a deep dive into this bill, but upon reading it, the 21st line of the first page makes a reference to Chapter 51 of the Penal Code, which does not currently exist. And so I'm wondering, did you pass Chapter 51 of the Penal Code describing which border infractions would be dealt with by this border court system? Because it leaves kind of like a pretty big gap with regard to what they're going to be dealing with exactly on the first page. Did you fix that? I'm not seeing any nods of yes or no.
Just continue.
No, I mean, it's a serious question and a serious concern. But what I want to really speak to is that how many of you have been to El Paso? Because after living there for 28 years and moving here and living for 2, the first thing that I noticed is that there aren't helicopters over my head every day. I don't hear the sound anymore the way that you hear it constantly. There is an enormous amount of border enforcement and security, and there's an enormous feeling that you are always being watched and having your actions monitored by somebody so that you don't fall or step out of line. And surely, I know that this speaks a little bit more to the next bill than it does to this one, but we don't need any more money being dedicated to this issue.
We have to have you end. Thank you, though. You'll note you're against HB 7.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Who's next? Luis Miranda. Luis, we have you registered for yourself against HB 7. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Go right ahead.
All right. My name is Luis Enrique Miranda, and I am from El Paso, Texas. And like my fellow El Pasoans, I'm standing against HB 7. And as has been repeated by many other people, deterrence is just not going to work. I mean, I've worked as an immigration reporter in 2018, following the migrant protection protocols and doing analysis and collecting reports and testimonies from immigrants who were affected by that. And I can tell you that the only way deterrence would ever work in the United States is if you turn the United States into a worse place than where people come from. And I understand there's been comments from the committee about how there's places worse than Central America. Well, I mean, I don't see the relevancy of that as far as why people come here. It is compulsive, right? People have talked about the issues that push them out of their country, issues that force them out of their country. I've heard testimonies from dozens and dozens of migrants about why they come here, and you will simply not stop that by deterring it. You will not. And you will, it's an immigration system that's broken, and as other people have said, we need to fix it at a federal level, state level. You're not gonna be able to stop why people come here. And there's also discussions about overrunning or overwhelming our country, and that's just not true. I mean, there's a lot of states whose populations are decreasing, who are running out, and really immigration has historically been the way that the United States has maintained itself and has prospered. So I don't understand that argument either. And so I stand against this bill, and I think that we need to find humane ways to ensure that people can come here and thrive here as they have historically.
Thank you very much, Luis. Sophia De Loreto Chudy. Sophia, we have you registered as yourself against HB 7. Is that correct?
Correct.
Go right ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, Council. My name is Sophia De Loreto Chetty, and I am vehemently against this bill, HB 7. Operation Lone Star has been a colossal waste of money in this state. We have seen it over and over again. We've heard multiple testimonies about it tonight. And my biggest issue is, as a resident of Texas, as a citizen of the United States, and as a taxpayer in Texas, that we are continuing to spend state dollars to institutionalize a program that isn't working, instead of dedicating valuable money and resources to things that actually need it, like public education. We have an incredible surplus of money right now. We are the second largest economy in the United States, and yet we are denying money to public education and public educators, and we are continuing to ask questions about why is our education system failing. And so to see our resources being allocated for a program that is truly failing and continues to fail is really disheartening as a everyday citizen of Texas. So thank you for hearing our testimony, and I hope that you listen to the border communities that came all the way here to testify tonight.
Sophia, thank you so much. Any questions? Thank you very much. Members, that's the end of the testimony. Chairman Gillian, it's your time to close.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Members, House Bill 7 simply helps border communities cope with the strains that immigration, criminal activity, and the negligent federal government have had on our communities. We're working on a few minor changes on another committee sub, and we'll get to you that as soon as possible. I can help answer any questions if y'all have any. If not, I close.
Any questions, member? Oh, that's you, Representative Guillen. All right. Seeing none, thank you, Chairman Guillen. The chair moves to withdraw the committee substitute HB 7 and leave the bill pending at this time.